So why don't we call a meeting to order? Hello. It's a jovial group today. Hello, everybody. I have 4:30. Welcome to the Transportation Commission meeting. Before we get into approval of the minutes, I just want to mention to everybody that we have 2 new members who were approved at the council meeting on the 4th. Patricia Butler and Bridget Brown. I don't think I see either one of them here. Either in the house. It was short notice for them in terms of them being able to attend. Say again?
No.
Bridget was appointed to June 30th of 19 and Bridget to June 30th of 21. Say again? Pat is 19 and Bridget is 21. Okay? I have a little chart. If anybody wants a copy of my little chart, I'm happy to share it. And the reason I have a little chart is the reminder that we have been operating with the alternates being voting members because we were too short. So now we're not too short anymore. So at the beginning of each meeting, I think what I'll be doing is assessing who's here and so which alternate can participate and make motions, et cetera. Carl is the first alternate, Gary is the second alternate. But just a reminder, alternates can always participate in the discussions, be members of subcommittees, appointed representatives to other committees, et cetera. So tonight, I don't see Jessica here, and I don't see Patricia here, and I don't see Carl here, and I don't see Bridget here. So that means, Gary, you're up as a quorum counting member, and you can make motions, et cetera. So any comments or questions about that? Anybody? I think that at the first meeting when Bridget and Patricia are here, I'll let them introduce themselves like we did at our first meeting. Okay. So did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes?
I'll make a motion for approval. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any comments or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Any public comment on anything that's not on the agenda this evening? Okay, I don't see any. Any disclosures and or recusals? Okay, so let's go into new business. F1, Tom, the background information on the Metro service changes. And thank you for coming tonight to do this for us.
Great. Sometimes this has a mouse, I think.
It's on. It looks like it's on over there now. Your red light's on? Good. Okay.
Yeah. I guess someone must have stolen the mouse.
You want mine?
That's okay. I'm just here for the presentation and, you know. Okay, so at the last commission hearing, there was a discussion of changes to Route 37 and 38, and we had a lot of testimony, and actually a lot of the testimony was very good, and I think the Metro staff, they took that testimony into account and they made several revisions. One is I think they're continuing to go into the Dennett area, and then they're going to postpone decisions on where we route buses versus Oakwood and Atwood. But as I was listening to the hearing and then seeing a lot of new members, and some have quite a bit of transportation background, some don't, I thought it would be useful just to provide some background on certain issues, like for instance bikes, pedestrians, traffic flow, and Metro, bus service, so that as you make decisions in the coming years, you have kind of a background on what are the key issues, why are some things considered not, and that way you can also evaluate how do those policy things, whether you agree with them or not agree with them, interact with the testimony and the needs of the residents. So I put together something for the TPPB, which is the Transportation Board, and I'm going to repeat it for tonight. And I think I might do this perhaps a couple times, as we talk and tackle different issues. Let's just start with transit measures. I'm going to start it off with some commercials. This is an example. Oftentimes people say, why are we focusing on transit, or why am I always talking about transit? And transit is really well linked to meeting the needs of growing and flourishing urban environments. This is an article from the Twin Cities. I feel like they spent some time investing in their transit. 2 decades ago with light rail, more recently with bus rapid transit, and the Twin Cities is actually flourishing. In fact, there was just an article in the paper today or yesterday talking about how Minnesota and Wisconsin are comparing regarding the economy. Here's a recent story on NPR. Talent wants transit. Companies near transportation gain the upper hand. This is specifically in regards to Chicago. Then this is another NPR story that talks about areas with mass transit see job growth, research indicates. This was actually a verbal interview, and a couple of the snippets out of the interview to me are interesting. Shaper, who was one of the interviewees, said, the council research shows that more than half of the jobs created in the Chicago area are now located within a half-mile of public transportation stops. Other studies show similar economic development patterns in downtown areas all across the country, with job growth greatest in the areas that are well served by transit. And Winnick says it appears that mass transit also fosters economic resiliency. They go on to say Chicago isn't the only region experiencing this kind of business boom. From Seattle to St. Louis, Minneapolis to Atlanta, companies are relocating near transit lines. But Kirk Dillard, who heads Chicago's RTA, says many of the nation's aging transit systems are in desperate need of upgrades. So that's my commercial. I'm going to now move into some of the background.
You left out Portland, Oregon.
Well, not only Portland, places like Cleveland, Ohio. You think about Cleveland, Ohio. They have been investing in their transit system, and Cleveland's kind of a happening place now. It's a growing and exciting urban area. The National Association of City Transportation Officials was initiated perhaps about 8 years ago, and they've produced a series of guides, and one recent guide is the Transit Street Design Guide. This was just released last year. And what I did is I took out, it's a great guide. You can see by my organization that I use it. Books that you use are good books, right? And so I clipped out policy portions of this guide that I feel like would be useful to you as you make longer-term decisions regarding the transit system. It talks about how transit provides better streets, better services, it creates urban places, it's a mobility service for the whole city. It talks about growth without congestion. If we think about East Washington Boulevard, or East Washington Avenue, right? I've only been here 30 years, right? But if you look down East Washington Avenue 8 years ago and you look down it today, it looks very different. And then 8 years from now, it'll look very different. And we are developing in areas in a way that's dense. And that's good in that it does not conserve resources, but it also requires new types of transportation thinking. Safe movement at a large scale, and then permanent economic benefits. Transit provides the opportunity for more throughput. This is a graphic that you'll often see in many transit presentations. You can just carry a lot of people with transit versus an automobile. One bus equals about every 40 cars. So every time you're stuck in a car behind a bus on Johnson Street, which sometimes is frustrating because they stop, there's this bus. That bus is the same as 40 cars, you know what I mean? So it's really taking up less space and really more efficiently moving people. And we find that in Madison as well. This is my famous back of the envelope graphic that I've given many times. It talks about capacity. If we look at East Washington Avenue, we have capacity for about 3,300 vehicles per hour. We look at the demand, we have demand for about 3,600 vehicles per hour. If we look at the jobs projected for downtown Madison by 2050, that's 10,000 jobs. That would add 2,100 vehicles to East Washington Avenue. So how do you do that? However, we have 38 buses with a capacity for 1,500 people per hour. So if we just doubled our bus, so we had 76 and we made them 60-foot buses instead of 40-foot buses, we've taken care of all our need. So we can either add 2 lanes to East Washington Avenue or strengthen our transit service. Our inbound buses carry the same amount as 1.5 lanes on East Washington Avenue. So because if we're going to grow in transit, I believe transit is a key part of how we will grow. We have to understand how transit experiences delay. This is a graphic shown from Minneapolis, Minnesota. They did a study on their buses. 42% is spent with the bus moving, 23% at red lights. About 32% of their time is spent boarding. So you can see that's a significant cost, travel time cost, that an automobile doesn't have, right? And so that's when you look for efficiencies, you really can't see any efficiencies in them moving, right? You can look for some efficiencies in the red light, but you can look for more efficiencies in the boarding. And sometimes that can make a big difference. I'm going to move on to the next slide. This is a slide presented, it's a hypothetical example for a bus system that uses a 70-minute cycle time. Okay? On the left, if you have a 70-minute cycle time, 70-minute round trip, let's say you have 10-minute headways, and so a headway is the distance between one bus and the next bus. Okay? You would need 7 buses. Okay? Let's say you were able to get them out of congestion, maybe improve their boarding so that it's more efficient. Maybe they don't stop as many times. So you can just do 10 minutes of time savings, right? Well, then you could either have one less bus because you only need 6 buses, or you could have headways, headways of 8.6 minutes or 8.5 minute headways, or you could expand more service. So what does this look like for Metro? So this is a little bit different slide than what I presented on Monday because Chuck said, Tom, you've got to make sure your numbers are right. But I previewed this slide through him now, and hopefully he's okay with it. But let's say if we did a 14% reduction in resources, which means that we could get our buses going 14% faster, one way or the other. Well, that would mean, $4 to $6 million in Metro's budget. Or it could mean more on-time service. Or it could mean more weekend service. All these routes that we have to cut back on the weekend, we would have money to do them. Or we could expand the route coverage. See, so sometimes when you think about, the impacts of making the service more efficient, you think, they're just impacts. But those impacts are really trade-offs in how you allocate your resources, So let's look at bus priority and how do you make transit a priority. And there's some exotic ways to do it. One is the picture on the left is from San Francisco. Those are red bus lanes. I hope that I live to see a red bus lane in Madison. But that's somewhat exotic, right? That's a dedicated runway. The ordinary is just dealing with stop consolidation. Stop consolidation. And that can do quite a bit as well. So there's a video that helps understand what stop consolidation can do, and it's an informational video put out by the Transit Center. Now, I'm doing this as background. I think the public hearing that we had 2 weeks ago was great, and the points that were brought up were excellent, and Metro responded to those comments, I feel like, in a good way. But there will be more bus route service changes that come before you, and if we implement BRT, it might not be one route, it might be 10 routes or 15 routes. And so how do we view these things? So here's the video.
Some things are better when they're further apart. When bus stops are too close together, it slows everyone down. New York City's bus stops are some of the closest in the country, and on many routes, stops are even closer together than what our guidelines suggest. How did we get here? Mrs. McGillicuddy asked her council member for a bus stop. And who wouldn't want to give Mrs. M a bus stop? But what this means over time is that there's a bus stop on every corner, slowing down the trip for everyone. What does bus stop balancing mean for riders? Well, it typically keeps stops that are key transfer points, as well as ones with high ridership. Stop balancing prioritizes stops near healthcare facilities, schools, large employers, community centers, and other points of interest. Additionally, consolidating bus stops allows agencies to make improvements at the remaining stops, such as adding shelters and benches. People who can currently reach multiple stops won't see any difference.
But I don't want to walk any further.
I know. But you know, if you walk just a little bit further, it means that people like me get to our doctor's appointments faster. And then we'll all have more time to do the things that we love. In New York City, riders will soon see bus stop balancing along express bus service routes on Staten Island. But Transit Center would like to see this strategy all over the country. Along with all-door boarding, off-board fare payment, and dedicated bus lanes, it can make a big difference for bus riders anywhere. Join the chorus of people calling for bus stop balancing.
Okay, so that was kind of a simple video, just so you get the background. This is a common issue in I think every city that has a metro system, right, a bus system. This is from our current bus stop spacing from the 2014 to 2017 TDP, Transit Development Plan. So you can see that we're well below the quarter mile spacing. Now, I believe Johnson Street and Gorham, that's District 2, am I right? I'm still learning the districts, right? I know District 6 because I live in District 6. They've done some rebalancing, but probably the remainder of the system is probably pretty similar to the way it is. One other item, and this is probably the last item, is called route simplification. Direct simple routes are easy to use and save time compared with circuitous routes. Transit routes that have evolved in a piecemeal fashion over decades can be simplified to create more frequent and direct service. And you see that in ours, where sometimes we have a route and it'll say via Atwood, via, there's all types of vias, and so what that means is if a bus kind of varies where it's located, it's more complicated. Does that mean, when can I pick up that bus? Do I pick it up here, or do I pick it up over there? Generally, trend is generally a longer walk distance with more frequency is preferred over a shorter distance with less frequency. So that's kind of the principle. But then there are exceptions to everything, you know. But I'm just kind of giving you kind of a background, because this is a specific topic that's listed in the ordinance for the Transportation Commission, is to review bus route changes. And so having an understanding of why they might be requested. Sometimes this is a response to a construction project, but sometimes there's just other reasons. And then tonight we have the BRT meeting, right? Well, the BRT meeting, I don't believe it will reduce service to anyone, but I do think it will change service. You know, service will change. And so this commission will have to understand what does that mean and what will it look like. So thank you very much. That's all I have.
Anybody have any questions for Tom? Okay. Thank you, Tom. Say again? So F2, the metro service changes?
As Tom mentioned, we are making some adjustments to our proposals, which our staff will review quickly. You're from our planning unit, and Jesse from marketing will go through those now.
Yeah, excuse me. I wasn't here for the actual public hearing, so Tim did the hard work, and I'm hoping I get to do the easy work tonight. You guys all have one of these in your packet, and we've also got it up on the screen, but if they start referring to page numbers or whatever.
Is it the revised one or the one that was in our packet? Which one was it?
Probably the revised one, I would think.
And then there was a PowerPoint that was also distributed, in addition to, it looks like this.
It's in there,
They're
yeah.
all in that revised one. Yeah.
Correct.
So, okay, starting with the easy stuff, the Route 37, moving it from Buckeye up to Cottage Grove Road, we're going to continue to propose that. There really wasn't any feedback on that. Route 16 and Route 16 will continue to serve Buckeye between Turner and Monona Drive, and Route 31's down at Monona Drive, going both ways. Yeah, there's another easy one. Shifting Route 37 off of the kind of treacherous Stoughton frontage road over to Advance and Helgeson, gets us a little closer to some employers, and gets rid of a kind of an ugly stop in the middle there. This goes along with the Route 37 switching to Cottage Grove Road. That means the 38 will as well, every other trip. And we're going to continue to propose that just because we kind of have to. If we're going to utilize the new bus stop up there at by the New Penny Library on Cottage Grove Road at Dempsey. The 37 and 38 kind of, they swap there. The bus comes out as a 37 and it turns into 38 to go the other way. And so we're proposing to have that happen at that nice bus cutout that they've constructed for us for just that purpose. On the next page, I don't know if you see the kind. What's that? Oh, it's up. Okay. What we're some of the points of why what we're considering. There was 18 negative feedback comments before the public hearing, but we're thinking it may have been kind of confusing signs at the bus stops themselves. And once my daughter was one of them who panicked, and I explained it to her, and she says, "Oh, okay, that's no big deal." And then so she was able to pass the word on to other riders. Route 16 will still be up on Buckeye between Monona Drive and Turner Avenue, and I think one thing to realize is that layover point that we showed down at the old layover point down at Buckeye and Monona Drive is going away during the construction, and so that kind of forces our hand to move it up there onto the Cottage Grove Road location by the New Penny Library. There's a lot of heat for the proposal to get buses off that Dennett Hargrove Dempsey loop north of Cottage Grove Road, and so we're withdrawing that proposal. No longer suggesting that one. There's the reasons down there. It actually has quite an impact on a lot of dwelling units. It says 632 are beyond the 1/4 mile typical walking distance. We're postponing the proposal to take the bus off of Oak Ridge Avenue and put all the 38s up on Atwood Avenue. We want to collect some additional data, such as one of the things we really want to look at is kind of seasonal ridership, like what's it look like during the summer versus what's it look like in the dead of winter. How many people are kind of swapping between probably bikes and buses. Yeah, that proposal, that particular proposal is actually mentioned in the TDP that's still out there. The Oak Ridge is actually narrower than streets we would rather operate upon by quite a bit, and we get to the deal where you're meeting two vehicles on Oak Ridge. The bus has to try to slide in between parked cars or something, if the other person coming the other way is real willful. And so we wouldn't be putting a route on that street if it was something new. We wouldn't be choosing that street. But anyway, so we're going to collect additional data, look at any accident data, schedule adherence, and then, like I mentioned, the ridership during the summer and winter months. Maybe there's a possibility of removing some of the parking in the most troublesome areas, and so on. So we're going to postpone that one. I don't know if you've got questions for me. There's the feedback on the back. It kind of gives you a summary of.
We do have one person who wishes to speak on this.
Oh, sure.
So I guess what I'd suggest is that we have him go ahead and speak and then go ahead and have the discussion after that.
Okay.
So that if there are thoughts that are brought forward, we can include those in the discussion. Grant Foster has mentioned that he wishes to speak on 3 different agenda topics. If you could just talk about the bus route changes now.
Yeah.
And you would have 3 minutes.
Okay, I shouldn't take 3.
Okay,
Mostly
thank
just
you.
wanted to say thank you for withdrawing the proposal for the Dennett-Dempsey shift. I do live in that area. I don't use the bus at all, but it is really a lifeline in terms of transit for about half of the East Moreland neighborhood. So I think you saw 630 some households, and it would not have been going from 15 to 30 minutes or having to walk a little bit more. It would have been very, very impactful. So thank you for that. I also did want to share some concerns I heard from Lake Edge residents about the other proposal that is still recommended and about that impact of going from 15 to 30 minutes. And obviously there's a lot of things to weigh and consider. But I just want to call out, I think both of these neighborhoods are really ripe for enhanced transit service, and I think there's a lot of pent-up demand and a lot of ridership is my hunch that would really be well served even by just commuter routes to the Capitol and campus. So, looking for continued ways to try and invest there would be really helpful. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is I heard at the last meeting a lot of public comments around the challenge of crossing Atwood as one of the reasons for the Oak Ridge shift. And I know the focus is on the bus routing, but I think that was a really important piece of information that was coming from a number of people. And it's something that you guys are hearing here. There is a different Atwood plan that's sort of in progress, and there's this stretch of Atwood will probably be coming in a couple years. But hearing people say that walking it's a barrier, and it makes just getting onto the bus on the other side of the street seem much further away than necessarily just the increased walking distance. So I think that's a really important point. And the other one is around the challenge that Metro has with Milwaukee and Dempsey Road, and one of the reasons that there isn't as good of bus service in the East Moreland neighborhood. I'm hopeful that maybe with this Milwaukee corridor plan that we can really take a look at that intersection, both for how it could be improved for transit, being able to take a left turn there and get up to the transfer point, as well as pedestrian and bike crossing, because there's nothing there and it's really out of the way. The post office is right there. So I think that was another really important thing that came out of the hearings. I just wanted to share those. Thanks.
Rebecca, did you have something for Grant or just a general? Okay. Rebecca?
Just, I think I don't understand the combo of the continuing to propose on Route 38 and proposal withdrawn. So how do you hit that Penny Library stop if you're also continuing to serve Dempsey, Dennett, and Walter?
There's a split, oops, I'm sorry. There's a split in Route 38 at that point. It's like every other trip goes Dempsey, Dennett to Walter. And then the others right now are on Buckeye, and we're proposing to move those up to Cottage Grove Road.
Okay, so
But-
it's one of these via
Yes,
situations?
it's a via. Yeah, there's 3
Okay,
vias on
all right, got
that
it.
side. Yep.
Yeah.
Things will never have to use again.
Route even confuses me.
Okay, Gary?
If there aren't any more questions, I would move approval of the recommendations by Metro.
David does have a question. I'm sorry, Gary.
Thanks. In the response, it's not in this packet, but the one that I read online, staff responded by quoting from a recent book on transit. It was, you published an excerpt.
Jarrett Walker.
What's that?
Jarrett Walker quote.
Sure, okay. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, okay, there it is. So for those of you who haven't read it, the excerpt, it says basically that if an agency gears its service towards coverage versus frequency, it spreads its resources are spread thin. This results in infrequent service that isn't useful and not many people would ride. So is this the agenda from here on in to sort of shrink the system so that we're not spread too thin and that we are increased frequency?
It's not an agenda, it's really very similar to what Tom's presentation was, is that we're looking at a lot of things. In this case, that proposal is withdrawn, but we are looking at some of, not only the presentation that Tom presented, but I think you're going to hear more from Tom and from us about how we're trying to make sure we're keeping the system efficient. So I think that was quoted by our staff just to show you a perspective on it, but that particular proposal is not postponed, it's withdrawn.
I know, I want to go beyond the proposal.
Okay.
Because you're
Let me ask our planning manager
You're
if
citing
he
your,
wants to.
the text that you want to make known, and I assume that you're wanting to do this in more than Eastmoreland, and that it's something that you're looking at system-wide. And if that is the case, then it would be important to know what's the metric where service is pulled back, and what's the metric where that service which is pulled back is then added to a different route?
I mean, my short answer, and I'm going to ask Drew to answer it, is it's an imperfect metric, Alderns. It's not a direct black and white metric. It's more of one where we got to look at travel speed. We have to look at ridership. We have to look at amenities. We're looking at a number of things. Off the top of my head, when I look at that, I'm not aware of any active changes that we have for 2019 that would use this metric, but I will ask Drew if there's any on the table.
Not at this time.
Really?
Really? Yep.
Okay.
But Jarrett Walker is someone
Yeah.
that is a very vocal advocate for good transit planning and helping us balance. really the difference between how you get lots of ridership, but also how you have coverage and deal with equity issues. And that metric is not a black and white, oh, once you hit this point, you go this way. It's not like that. It's more like you're looking at multiple variables.
Yeah.
And then we're going to ask Tom, what does he think?
Well, I mean, some of it is, I mean, it could be described as a triage system as well, in which case you want to know who's getting in and who's left outside.
Some of the veteran members recall that as we were hitting capacity constraints, we were asked to look at some of the lower ridership routes and seeing if we could beef up capacity. We were not able to resolve that, and I think some of these sessions where we talk about this balancing act, these metrics, plural, are going to be brought before you. So if we do make a recommendation, we're very transparent about it, and we know that there will be some controversy, but it's something we feel we got to take on. So I'm glad to hear Drew said no changes planned to get at what you're suggesting. So
right.
that's what my understanding was as well.
Okay, back to you, Gary. You're suggesting a motion of the revised proposal?
Right, I would move that we adopt Metro's recommendation for the revised proposal for March service updates.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion? Gary, did you have, your light was on? No? Okay, it's off now? Okay. Anybody have any other, I'm sorry, the yellow light was on, so I thought you had something else to say, sorry. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. All right, thank you very much. And it sounds like we'll hear more as you have more research on some of the other, Oak Ridge and some of the other.
Yeah, we'll be bringing that back.
Our staff has a copy of the book, maybe multiple copies that Tom referenced. And
Okay.
that will be our guide. If anyone needs a copy, we can make sure you get one.
Yeah, well, I think all of the information that was shared, it's very helpful, and I think it would be great to share that with people so that we, understand. You don't have to give everybody a copy of the book, but just remind everybody of the name and, if there are sections that are helpful. Ash?
I just wanted to point out that the book that Tom referenced also, at nacto.org, they do have a lot of the pictures and guides within their website, so you don't actually have to buy the book, and a lot of the information is available online as well.
Okay, well, maybe somebody could share, maybe if you get a link to Patrick, he could share that with the everybody on the commission, and then we could certainly take a look at that as well.
Yeah, it's. I will work with Tom.
Yeah, we'll get
I write
that.
a lot online.
Yeah,
Sometimes I like to read.
yeah.
A cup of coffee, so I use paper.
Yeah, well, it would be great. This is very helpful information, and as informed as we can be when we make these decisions, we should be, so. Okay. All right, let's move on to F3. Bill?
I'd like to combine, see if we could combine F3, F4, and F5. Make a motion.
Okay, everybody agreeable to that?
Okay.
You making a motion?
Make a motion.
Is there a second?
Rebecca.
Okay, motion by Bill, seconded by Rebecca. Okay, any comments or discussions on these three resolutions?
Just that it makes sense to take them up together because they're all sort of related, having to do with how Metro and the city gets funding through Dane County for our services.
Yeah, it makes sense to me, too. Okay, Gary?
I would only ask Chuck if there's anything special about the three that you need to point out to us.
Just that those involved in the family care discussions over the last 2 years may have thought that all of our coordination with Dane County has ended, and it hasn't. These are important, though smaller than the MA waiver coordination we did for 20 years. These are still very important services that we coordinate so that we can provide a higher level of services to older adults and people with disabilities in the entire county, both in our service area and in the rural area of Dane County.
people have been coming and going, so I'm trying to keep track of who's here, and we still are 2 members down, so I believe the 2 alternates are still able to vote and participate. Yeah, so I've just been keeping track. If you're wondering what I'm doing over here, I'm keeping track of that, keeping us all legal. So we have an assistant attorney with us, so we're still all good to go. So any other discussion about the resolution? Okay, all those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought there was. Okay, is there a motion on the 3 then? All right, Bill, I thought you did both. Go ahead. Motion to move all 3? Okay, thank you. And there's a second by Gary. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. Okay, you bet. And Yang is here now, so he and Chuck are going to switch, and you have a BRT meeting to get to. So item F6, the Transportation Commission special rules. Gary is going to talk about those, and John Strange is here as well, in case anybody has any questions for John. Gary?
Well, I was not here I left early for the last meeting, so the body had some discussion about these rules. You know, I think I'm going to offer a minor editorial correction, and I could do that within a motion to adopt if that's okay with the chair, unless there are other people who have questions of John or yourself or myself.
Okay, does anybody have any, you want to go ahead and make the motion and explain what your suggested changes, and then if there's a second, we could have the discussion once it's on the table?
So I would move adoption of our special rules, which are captured in a document that will be part of a handbook. And I would suggest that the correction would be made to Roman 8, paragraph B, Roman 4, and substituting the word selection rather than election in that paragraph. So it would read, annually in July following the selection of aldermanic members and the appointment of resident members, the commission shall select a chair and vice chair. Because really, I think that's a better word than election, because that might confuse people. The alders are elected by the public every 2 years, and you know, the mayor would nominate, or maybe that'll change in the future, that the members are selected on an annual basis.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. John, did you have any? Let's see, can you light up your button so I get you there? Thank you very much.
I have no concerns about that.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion and a second with the change in Roman 4 under, well, Roman 8 rules of procedure under special rules. The highlighted versions are the only thing that we're considering and approving, or suggested for approval today. And under B, Roman 4, we're changing the word election to selection, adding an S there, selection of aldermanic members. Any discussion? Bill?
I have a question about in Roman numeral 5, that's section 33.01, paren 9, paren C. I guess I didn't look it up. I guess I could look it up, but could John just basically give me a 30-second, what is that?
I carry it around with me, Bill. It's kind of like my Bible about how committees are supposed to work, but John can tell you more about it.
Basically, that's the provision that talks about what a chair can and can't do, and it specifically prohibits discussion, making motions, and voting. So our chairs are not technically supposed to participate in discussion.
Okay.
They often do, but they're not technically supposed to under that rule. So more recently, when commissions are making special rules, they're allowed to deviate from that if in their special rules. So this just says.
But they would not, under this, then Ann could make a motion. She could not do that.
No.
Ann could not make a motion or vote, but
Okay.
she can discuss.
Unless there's a tie, right, John?
Right.
Yeah, okay, all right. Now I understand. Thanks.
Sure.
Are there other comments or questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the special rules as amended. Rebecca?
Sorry, I just want to acknowledge all the work that you and Gary and John and others have put into this. And I think it will serve not only this commission, but the city as a whole well as the Task Force on Government Structure moves forward with potential recommendations on orientation for committees, boards, and commissions, on rules, et cetera, et cetera. So just thank you very much for putting the time in.
Yeah, well, and thank you. And we have we'll be scheduling a meeting in January to actually work on fleshing out the orientation handbook. And, you know, Patrick mentioned to our 2 new members that we're working on this orientation handbook, and everybody is real excited about that possibility. So.
Well, it's kind of the beta test for everything, all other boards, commissions, and committees. So thank you.
Yeah, great. Other discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. All right, thanks, Gary. Okay, moving on to staff reports. Captain Wheeler? We have the police third quarter traffic enforcement activity report, if you'd like to come up. This is the first time this body is looking at this report, so you may need to give us a little bit of a background, and if you would. Thank you so much.
Well, basically, this is a report of all of our traffic citations that we write on a quarterly basis. What occurs is that through our records management system, we're able to compile all the citations that we write. We can break it down by whether it's done by our test officers, which is our traffic enforcement and safety team, or the other officers within the department. And also we're able to actually take a look at the type of, look at the crashes that we have documented for that quarter. So I could go through the numbers, or if anyone has any questions. As you can see, there were some decreases in traffic citations that have occurred between this quarter this year and last year. And we haven't done a deep dive into that, but it could be several reasons. You know, officers who are off, family leave, vacations. So until we do a deeper dive, we really can, I really can't speak to why there was a decrease in citations for the quarter.
And
could it be that the city of all of us became just more law-abiding?
Yeah, we could be optimistic.
Rebecca?
Is there any public comment on this item?
I haven't, no?
Nope.
Nope, not till H1.
Okay. Well, then, so this has been in the prior committee, the Ped Bike Motor Vehicle Commission has received these reports before. And I think a general attempt by that commission has been made, or expression of, a desire has been made to see if there can be more, how can I say it, more reporting on actually dangerous intersections instead of just like number of citations. And I understand, by the way, congratulations on your retirement. I understand you won't be able to move this forward personally yourself, but thank you very much for your many years of service. But at any rate, I just want to get this commission to understanding that there has been much talk about this potentially being a better report for this commission if it were less about how many citations were given and more integrated into general planning around transportation safety based on the actual dangers of, roadways and intersections. So I don't know, I know you guys have your systems of data collection and ways of reporting that are very much, that generate reports like this. But whether it's Lieutenant Knight or whomever, MPD, can work more closely with Yang's shop and the transportation department to fine-tune these reports and also enforcement activities, especially not to just like over the hill at Packers where it's easy to catch speeders, but to where there are actual unsafe situations based on data. I think that would be very helpful.
Well, safety in all modes of transportation is certainly our responsibility on the commission. And one of the things that we just adopted in our special rules is an annual work plan that Yang is working on right now. So Yang, maybe there's a way to sort of, as we describe the various reports that we're working on, maybe we can, and that will come back to the commission for discussion and approval of the work plan. Maybe as we talk about these things, we can help flesh them out so that people understand how the reports are useful to us in terms of fulfilling our responsibilities on the commission. Go ahead, Rebecca.
To follow, yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because, police just do one little part of safety, which is enforcement. And then there's, engineering and planning and a whole other, all of these other realms of creating public safety on the roads. But just, I guess my point is, if there were greater connection between MPD and how you deploy your personnel with the actual, traffic safety data, or future plans for generating better safety, I think I'd just like to underscore that hasn't necessarily been happening. It would be great if it could.
Right.
Yeah.
If I can add, one of the main ways that we do this is about emails, complaints to us. And a lot of times we get them, especially for the pedestrian crossings. I mean, that's huge right now, as far as people just calling us and saying they cannot cross the street safely because people do not pay attention to what a pedestrian crossing is and know how to, if somebody's in the crosswalk, then they need to stop. So that's one of our major ways that we get information on where to deploy school districts. The school crossings, that's another one, going from 35 to 20 miles an hour. People are speeding through those, and that's all over the city, no matter which neighborhood you're in. And of course, the residential speeding. I mean, when you look at the city of Madison, just about everywhere, it's about 25, 30 miles an hour. And of course, people going on Johnson, Gorham, and all the other side streets that people think you could just, fly down the street. We get those calls of speeding all the time. So a lot of it is complaint driven, right now, from the chief getting emails, I'm getting emails, or, on our traffic complaint hotline. So.
Ken, whoops.
So I'm new to this. Can you just tell me, what is the team?
The traffic enforcement and safety team is made up of 5 officers and 1 sergeant that has responsibility to just focus on traffic enforcement and safety for the entire city.
And then you just make decisions as far as where to deploy?
Yes, what they try to do with only the 5 officers and 1 sergeant is try to do a project in each district. When they can, they get together like twice a week as a team, but then they do liaison to the other district to try to take care of those complaints that are coming into the district commanders, myself, or on our complaint line.
Okay, I think you, Rebecca, you were talking, or somebody was talking about the crosswalk thing. I think there's a lot of confusion, or at least lack of awareness of otherwise well-informed people as far as what the rules are for traffic on crosswalks. Like, I think that a lot of people think that unless it's marked in zebra stripes, that's the only time that you have to stop. I mean, seriously. And so then what happens is people who sort of know the rule try to cross at non-zebra stripe and are just amazed that people aren't doing that. And so I'm not quite sure how to go about that, but I mean, these aren't just little teenagers. These are people that I otherwise respect and go to church with, and I keep saying, no, they're really, it's not just zebra stripes, and they're just adamant that, no, you can just blow by anyway.
So you're talking public education.
Oh,
A lot of
yeah,
what you're
and-
talking about, Rebecca, was public education.
Yeah, and probably through a lot of media. Nowadays, people are so dispersed that you can't just do a print thing and you can't just do a AM radio thing. I mean, there's just so many tough ways to reach people who don't have to take their driver's test again for another 30 years,
Right. And I would agree with you. One of the things about the crosswalks and on both sides, whether it's a pedestrian or a vehicle, some pedestrians think they could just walk right out into traffic and, the car's supposed to stop. Well, the car has to have an opportunity to stop. Plus, there is a citation for sudden pedestrian movement into traffic. So you have that on one side, but then you have the operators, of course. I mean, there's some crosswalks across East Washington Avenue. If you really look at it, it's a crosswalk. So if somebody's in that crosswalk, traffic should be stopping. People just do fly by. You can see that.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's a lot of public safety announcements that could be made. Even for vehicles when they're coming up upon the crosswalk, you'll have one vehicle stop and then another vehicle just fly by. And I have stopped people for that, not stopping for the pedestrian. And they would say, well, I didn't know somebody was in a crosswalk, so my speech to them would be, if you see a car stopped at a crosswalk, it's probably a good idea for you to stop also. They're probably letting people go by.
I'll see.
Mick is here, and he's going to hate me for saying it, but almost everybody who drives past a stop-walk or cross thing sees the back of a bus. And I know that's a revenue-producing area as far as education, but it's the one that everybody sees the back of these buses. And that might be the most efficient way, really, to get to who we're talking about.
Yeah, that's a great point. We actually did some campaign on buses for pedestrian crossings. If you remember, a couple of years ago, we collaborated with Wisconsin DOT. So we did some ads on metro buses. That's definitely a great way to do public outreach education. So we'll try to do more of that. Maybe also, in the future using social media, things like that. So we'll look into it. That's a great suggestion. I also want this is also related to what Alder Campbell has pointed out. For things to be effective, we really should look at more than one thing, not just enforcement, but also engineering, education. So all of those we should really work on each component of them and come up with a comprehensive package. Yeah,
Church bulletin inserts.
Right.
David.
They're already good people.
First David, and then we have Jessica
on,
and Ash, and then Bill.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a different topic. I don't know if you heard, the Traffic Commission of New York was on Fresh Air 2 nights ago, and he talked about, he just published a book on traffic and discusses like 5 incidents in Manhattan where it became totally gridlocked. And I'm reminded of that at the intersection at John Nolan and Blair Street, I guess, because that it gridlocks often where people on a green, even though traffic is stopped before them on Blair, people will pull up behind them, and then the light turns green to the incoming, and of course, then you sit there this way, and then on, and on, and on, and on. It just becomes a... And in New York, as a former New Yorker, there are signs all over that say, "Don't block the box," and people know they shouldn't be doing it, but of course they do it. But I don't think people here know that at all, that driving up behind someone who's stopped and you're sitting now in the middle of an intersection is not legal. Is that correct here? Is that?
You should not be blocking
Yeah,
intersections, but
right.
again, it's public information. Do people actually understand that?
Yeah.
As they're trying to make the light.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I mean, you saw it probably big time, Johnson and Wisconsin Avenue
Yeah.
when they were doing the construction, and I mean, that was blocked all the time.
All the time.
Because people were just trying to make it. And it still happens on Gorham, or
And-
not Gorham, State and Johnson.
Do you ever ticket for that, or just, what's the response to that?
I have not.
Yeah,
You know, so
okay.
I can't say. for-
Yeah, and let me ask Yang then, I mean, I know I think we're trying to reduce the number of traffic signs and just signage in the city, but at intersections such as John Nolan and Johnson and State and similar kinds of intersections where we do have frequent gridlock situations, to have a sign that, at least to spark some interest in the notion of, not blocking traffic there, and it just, I don't know whether that would help, but I think people are, other than people honking at them when they're sitting there, it might help.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. We actually did implement that for some temporary situations. Like this year, we have a construction on West Washington Avenue at the West Washington region and Profit intersection. So we have issues of vehicles blocking the intersection because they couldn't, make the green, but they got stuck over there. So we did go out and install a few do not block intersection signs, and it did work. Yeah, so to some extent, yeah. So definitely we're looking to, if we can put them up those signs permanently at locations that really need it. Yeah, thank you.
Jessica?
I think your point is well taken about pedestrian education as well, and I hope that that's something as we start to take to heart some of these recommendations and how we can kind of fit that into the overall public safety structure. I think pedestrian education is as important as the vehicle education. I see both sides of it as somebody who, walks as much or more often than I drive. I see, especially with those flashing lights, maybe it would make sense at certain times of day and in certain high volume intersections to even have those be like a light, where it's time, it's not necessarily, because right now they're kind of on demand. And so every time, and they flash for a long time, which, is appropriate for all different, speeds that we all move across the intersection. But I think it confuses people, especially during high traffic, morning rush hour, because they just see it flashing all the time and there's nobody there because maybe somebody rode their bike across. So they go, and then as a pedestrian, sometimes I'll get that, one person stops, but I don't go because the other person's gonna fly by, and it just creates a lot of confusion. Whereas if it were kind of more of a regular timed traffic signal, like cars deal with, it might kind of make it a little clearer for everybody about who can go when, and kind of cue pedestrians a little bit more to be more regular.
And make it safer.
And make it safer, yeah. So just a thought.
Okay, great. Thanks. Ash?
Could you talk a little bit about the difference between the hazardous and non-hazardous violations? And where do traffic tickets, like parking tickets, figure in all of this as well?
Okay. Well, parking tickets that's parking utility. Basically, we supervise the parking enforcement officers, but they are actually with the parking utility. So we really don't have too much to say in that one, except for making sure people are out there and, writing the citations. As far as hazardous, non-hazardous, hazardous is going to be your moving violations. So those are going to be your red light signal violations, speeding. Non-hazardous could be anything from, tail light out to registration plates, anything that really doesn't have to do with driving behavior, but just your regular cars would be non-hazardous.
Got it, thank you. And do you have any idea of what sort of revenue comes in from these violations?
I do not have that, and to be honest with you, I kind of stay away from that, because when you start, putting revenue with citations, it leads to other things that, unintended consequences. And I want to just add, Alder Aarons mentioned about making traffic stops, and, I really encourage the public education more, because it is difficult to make traffic stops. Some people think it's really easy, but when you're on Johnson Street and you're running laser and you rush hour traffic, having somebody shoot the laser, then having somebody get out into traffic, make that stop, and then all of a sudden now you're causing a backup because now you got a cop car, with its lights flashing, and it's really difficult to make those traffic stops. Not making any excuses for, citations being up or low, but, that's a consideration that you have to make these traffic stops in safety also, and you have to be aware of the other traffic that's around you so you're not even causing accidents because of a traffic stop.
Bill?
Captain, do you collaborate with other units like the county sheriff? Do they have something at State Patrol? So like today, I was driving on the Beltline, so they were doing some sort of concentrated enforcement. I saw three vehicles pulled over within about a half a mile. So I knew some place that a laser or something was being used. But does the city also participate, like with the county on the Beltline then also?
Yes, the state has grants that they distribute, and those grants are usually administered by the county, and what they'll do, they'll get us, State Patrol.
Okay, so you work together as a team then?
And we'll have seatbelt grants, alcohol grants, red light grants out there, and we'll get a bunch of officers that'll be out on the road.
All right, okay, good.
Enforcing traffic.
Anybody have any other comments or questions for the captain? Okay, then if we could have a motion to receive the report? Motion by Ken, seconded by Bill. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yep, take care.
Okay, so move on to the annual crash report. Is it Tom?
Yep, Tom Moore.
Okay, Tom Moore,
Tom Moore
welcome.
from Traffic Engineering.
Okay. And again, this is our first time looking at this type of report, so a little background is always helpful for the group.
Okay, yeah. So each year, Traffic Engineering publishes a crash report, and that's what we're doing right now. So this is the 2017 crash report, even though it's the end of 2018. This is from 2017. And first, I should say this is for reportable crashes only. And I always used to think that a reportable crash just meant when an officer went to the crash site, but it has to meet these criteria. So it has to involve a person, vehicle, roadway, and then it has to either have an injury to a person, at least $1,000 in damage to a car or property, or $200 damage to a government property. So
Tom, maybe let me back up a little bit. So kind of, as the committee chair mentioned, let me give you guys a little bit background before Tom got into the details. So as Tom mentioned, we're Traffic Engineering publish report on crashes every year. That's typically for the previous year because the data would not be available for the same year. What we do is that we look at all the crashes happening in the city of Madison for last year, and we receive those data from the state through the Wisconsin Traffic Operations and Safety Lab at UW-Madison. Our staff go through each and every one of them because there are sometimes there are errors in a report. When officers are there trying to do a lot of things, sometimes errors happen. So we make sure the locations are correct. We categorize them. So we produce a report, we categorize based on different things, such as for intersections, for mid-blocks, for roundabouts, for pedestrians, for motorcycles, bicycles, and fatals, injuries. So we get all those statistics in this report. So we also compare it over the year, so we know the trend of what's happening in the city regarding traffic safety. Each of the crash is also geocoded in the GIS software. So that gives us lots of opportunities to look at what happened, where it happened, and it has attributes associated with it, such as time of day, the lighting condition, whether some driver behavior issues such as DUI, environmental issues. So we have all those information in a system. So that really helps engineers come up with strategies. First, identify the locations, needs attention, and then come up with strategies to correct them. So kind of, that's, previously, Alder Campbell made a really good point about, looking at statistics is just, one small part of it. Really look into the details and then find the countermeasures to improve things. That's the main goal of this exercise. So with that, I give you a little bit more information. Tom, you want to continue?
Yeah, I was going to
get into that later.
Kind of cover some of that stuff, so I can go through this pretty fast now. Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one thing to add is that this is actually a very exciting year for crash reporting because the state has switched to a new form, a new reporting system, the DT 4000. I think it's been over 20 years that they've used the same reporting system, the MV 4000. That's the paper report that you may have seen. But this new system has more specific data and just more fields in it in the reporting. So they've added things like driver behavior, distracted driving, different more options for reporting on the type of intersection or where pedestrian crashes, where they were hit within the intersection. So there's just a lot more information now, and that's going to be really useful going forward. So, and part of and the reason why this is coming so late is because all the crashes throughout the state are funneled through the UW TOPS lab, like Ying mentioned. So we wait until they release the data to us, and that there's usually a few months lag time on that. So, and with this new reporting system this year, they had some difficulties with the calculations, and they had to do some recalculations. So it came out a little late this year, but we expect it to be earlier next year. So yeah, we published it on the website, so anyone can look it up. And like Yang said, we go through these different types of crashes and summarize them. So that's what you all have in the report. And then we also show the 5-year trend. So as you can see, the number of crashes are down quite a bit from last year. That may or may not have something to do with the new reporting system. We'll probably be able to, see more of that trend moving forward to how the new system affects the numbers. But otherwise, I just included the pin diagram. So this is what our office does. We pin everything and enter in all the fields so we can look up crashes based on the different fields within the crash. So this is here today pretty much just to present the data. We haven't really analyzed reasons for crashes at certain intersections, but that's something that we're going to look into. So if you have any questions or comments on specifics, I can take it down now or address those later.
Yes, Jessica.
It looks like the report is primarily vehicle focused, right? So it would be either between vehicles or vehicles and bikes or vehicles and pedestrians. Where would data on bike crashes or bike ped crash, hopefully there aren't ped crashes, but if there are like bike ped crashes, would that go through the police department or how do those get reported?
That's a good question. So most of those crashes, police did, do response to those type of crashes. But most of these crashes would not meet the reporting criteria. So it's either no injuries or there's no significant property damage. Like, some people have expensive bikes, but there are very few of them, over a few $1,000s. So that's why you see very few crashes involving only bicyclists or pedestrians.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Gary? And then Ash, I'll come back to you.
I noticed that, the report also shows some of the intersections where these crashes occur. And I know, like, for cars, it's, the top 10 or top 30 worst places. But I also noticed that there's really no delineation of moped and motorcycle where those occur. Is that something that could be done, or is that because they're so less frequent than the others that you don't do that?
Yeah, we have that data. We can look at that.
I don't know if that would inform us more for, safety on those streets, in addition to automobile accidents, if they're in the same location, maybe that would be cause to be more concerned about that intersection, but
Right.
didn't see it here at all. Yeah, okay.
Ash? And then Ken?
Yeah, and it would be helpful, I think, also for us just to kind of get a perspective of how intersections or just roads are doing, if we got maybe a time series of what the crashes looked like in a couple of years before as well, on specifically the high crash rate intersections, and also maybe just looking at the crash rate as well, normalized by traffic.
Okay. Ken?
I'm wondering if there's a way that either by taking out the winter months or doing it by month or something like that, every once in a while, I would imagine that you could have, like you're averaging about 450 a month, so 30, that's about 15 a day or something like that. If you would have a situation, there are times, I think, where there's like 100 in a 2-hour period. They're just, the road's iced up or something like that. And if there's a way to factor out crashes that occur in just those things, because we're looking at that in a slightly different way. That's a crash on the road going past the university campus drive, and all of a sudden you have 10 cars there, and you call up and the police say, unless somebody's injured, just take care of it yourself. You know what I mean? Because that could affect the overall numbers. If we have a couple of those events in a year, you would have a real high peak, but you could have a situation where the crashes during the summertime are way down. So I don't know how you could tweak that by peak event things.
Another really good point. We do track every crashes by when it happened, so we can look at the weather, the weather data, trying to figure that out. You are right. So typically, lots of crashes happens during the bad weather days, especially in the first snow day of the year, and sometimes the last snow day of the year. Unfortunately, so we see a lot of crashes happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great point. Yeah, I also want to kind of respond to Ash's comment about looking at top intersections throughout the years. I think that's a really good idea. Actually, we already doing that. It's not in this report, but we typically after staff injuries report, we'll go through the top intersections, and we'll look at least 5 years in the past to see if there's any pattern or how things has changed, if there's anything that should be changed, your traffic control measure should be changed, or geometry has been changed. So we do look back. We generate crash diagram for each intersection. Yeah, great point.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just on that as well, if any more context on what treatment some of those intersections got and their efficacy reflected in the report would be helpful for us as well. So, thank you.
Okay, if there's no other comments, I'll take my turn. Since we have special rules, I get to wait till everybody else is done and have opportunity. So it seems to me, following up on what Rebecca said earlier about opportunities to identify ways to improve safety, somehow hooking the reports that we looked at this evening together and perhaps having you guys come back and talk to us after you've analyzed it to find out those opportunities to improve safety. And something that occurred to me as I was reading it, you look at the number of injuries per number of crashes, like the motorcycle accidents. Whoa, a lot of injuries compared to the number of crashes. Vehicle versus bicyclists, high number of injuries. Roundabouts, low number of injuries per incident. So, to me, that revolves around that goal of trying to improve safety. So what everybody's talking about sounds to me taking these reports to the next level that you've been talking about, Yang, and how can we use this information to do something with it? And that sounds like that's what everybody is interested in doing, is getting a little bit more into the data so that it can help us make better decisions about safety and recommendations on safety. So, other comments or questions? Okay, we'll need a motion to receive the report. Okay, Ken, seconded by Jessica. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? No, motion carried. Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting information. I'm taking lots of notes, and I think everybody else is too, so we can hopefully incorporate some of this into our work plan. Okay, next we have traffic signal priority list. We do have someone registered, excuse me? No, go ahead. We do have someone registered to speak, but what I'd like to do is, hear from staff on the background and, understand what we're looking at here and what the suggestions are, and then hear from the public, and then hear from the commission with regard to the recommendation. So Brian is going to give us a little bit of background on this and what's expected from the commission.
So before Brian gets started, I just want to say that, maybe kind of background. So this matter goes to this commission at least twice. So this is the first one. So this one will be staff presenting, the traffic signal request we received from 2018, the year 2018, and some of the considerations that the staff have, and also give opportunities for the public to make some comments. So we would like to, gather, inputs from the commission and get directions to see, which signals should we look further into it. So for each signal request, we have gone out, connect traffic data, as long as, we didn't receive it very late in the year when we had a chance to go out and gather traffic data. So we did some analysis on that. But we would also like to hear from the public, hear from the commission, so that we can develop a short list to do more study, to do more a report for the commission next time. And the next meeting, we'll present those, and we'll seek approval from the commission on it. So for the for each year we have a really long list, but for a short list, typically every year we have the time to study in detail about 5 or 6 intersections, and for each year typically we install sometimes 1, 2, 3 traffic signals because we already have a lot of traffic signals in the city for our size, and also traffic signals are expensive, so we want to allocate resources very wisely. So with that, I'll turn over to Brian.
Yeah, I'm Brian Smith with City Traffic Engineering. I think Yang pretty much stated everything, but I'm going to try to give you some more detailed explanation of our process, since this is the first time that this commission has heard our yearly traffic signal priority list. Even though looking through our records, I've got records of us doing these since 1985, at which time it was the Traffic Commission that was receiving these reports before there was the Pedestrian Bicycle Motor Vehicle Commission. As Yang was mentioning, we take inputs through, from citizens, from alders, from neighborhood associations, like anybody that calls up our office saying that, we think there's a problem here, there needs to be a signal. We will, look to see whether or not we've already studied it. If we haven't studied it, but we haven't, refreshed our data in a little while, we will go take out new counts, or maybe they told us about some problem we might not have been looking at recently, so we might do some extra studies for that. One of the first things that we do when we get a new intersection on the list is we schedule hose counts to collect the approach volumes on those approach. And every single intersection that's on the list, whether it's been on there before or not, we will review the crash history. And therefore, we rely on Tom and the crash data that they give us, but we read through every single report to see whether or not it would be reasonable that the types of crashes that were happening there could be corrected by a traffic signal. One of the reasons that we do that is because just because there are crashes, it doesn't mean that those crashes would have been corrected by a traffic signal. There is a traffic signal warrant that was on that. I think you all have our last year's 2017 approved traffic signal priority list. There's several different columns on that list. And the data that we collect, we use to rank each of these intersections based upon the columns that you see in there for what's called Warrant 1A and 1B. Those are based primarily on those hose counts that are taken for 24 hours of the day, and based upon the 8th highest hour of traffic volumes, we use that to be ranking them. Does that mean that those intersections are the most likely to get a traffic signal? The answer to that is not necessarily, because there are other factors, like there is the crash factor. Both of the intersections that we signalized this year in the city of Madison were warranted for signals based upon the crashes. Those were American Parkway and American Family Drive. It had a number of crashes out there, and one of the first things we're supposed to do is to try to see if there are other alternatives that we can do to decrease those crashes rather than put up a traffic signal. At that location, we thought a traffic signal was the only one. The other one that we did this year was the Maple Terrace and University. It's actually called Hilldale Way on the south side of that intersection. It goes into a new development at that intersection. Some of those other factors that we consider are pedestrian movements. There's a number of intersections throughout the years that we have put up for pedestrians, Dryden Northport, Jennifer Williamson, Seago Sawyer, Babcock University, and there's a number of other intersections in the city that have been installed primarily because of pedestrian movements. Another one that rings a bell about crashes to me was Broome and Gorham. That was an intersection that we felt there was absolutely no reason to put up a traffic signal. We should be able to find ways in order to reduce those crashes. There was vehicles on Broome Street that they should have been able to get great gaps from State Street and be able to, it was easy to get across with those big gaps, but there was cars that were parking in alongside Gorham in areas that were signed as no parking, and then we tried to get police enforcement and nothing worked, so we put up a traffic signal because it was the only way to stop the crashes. There's actually a total of 9 traffic signal warrants that are used. The Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, they highly recommend that traffic signals meet these minimum standards. before you put up a signal. And the reason for that is because if a traffic signal is placed at a location where it is not warranted, chances are you're going to be likely increasing the number of crashes or making the intersection, not as efficient. You're going to cause more delays. It's not a smart thing to be putting a traffic signal where there is not a good engineering study to validate that it should be placed there. Let's see. Went over how they were put in. With that, I could either open it up for questions for me, or otherwise we could take the public comments and then bring me back up afterwards, and then we can review which of the intersections that both staff or yourselves would agree would be correct for us to go forth and do further studies.
Can we wait till after the public comment, Ken? I would like to wait till after the public comment. If you would, Brian, at this point, I just have Grant Foster registered to speak for this item. Is there anyone else here that, from the public, who wanted to speak that didn't perhaps fill out a form? We do have, while Grant's coming up here, we did have a number of emails sent out to us. It was sent out late. It was almost 2:30 this afternoon, with a number of emails from people providing input. Did you see it? So since people didn't see it, I think I'd like to have you guys summarize the feedback and so that people can understand the feedback that came in as well. Grant, go ahead.
Thank you. First, I just wanted to offer kind of a general comment about this process, and I failed to introduce myself to some of you. My name is Grant Foster. I was on the Ped Bike Motor Vehicle Commission for a number of years, as well as the Long Range Transportation Planning Committee. So one thing that I wanted to put out there, and we did talk a little bit about this on PBMVC, is I think there's an opportunity to maybe review this process a little bit as well, with some attention towards thinking a little bit more broadly about intersection conflict and safety. And so this is really focused on signals, which is it's important that has its own process, and there's potentially assessments involved, so it's its own thing. But there's a lot of what I heard in the last conversation about this, especially pedestrian conflict and issues crossing places. I found that it's not really well represented here, and while there is a pedestrian warrant, overall, this, in my experience, this tends to really skew towards traffic volumes and crashes. And so, I don't think we really want to wait for more crashes, especially when they're involving pedestrians and cyclists because of the injuries involved. And I think we would all agree that there are reasons we'd want to better control intersections that aren't probably showing up using this warrant system. So this might be something that you could even send back to TPPB to review and see if there are any modifications to this that might help sort things out. I also think that we have, traffic engineering has been doing a lot of great work around multi-use path and street intersections, put up a lot of the rapid flashing beacons in the past. They've done some different things with the crosswalks, and that's not really part of a process like this. And so I really think there's an opportunity to potentially bring that all together and look at what are the problematic intersections in the city, whether they're bike crossings or crosswalks or whatever they are, and also then to open up the toolkit to being signals, stop signs, different signage, different painting, other geometric features. So I'm just going to put that out as a general comment. And then what I wanted to do was highlight 3 on this list for some consideration. One is number 11. It's Packers and 6th. This is a really important one because there's no other way to get from the east side to the north side between basically Fordham and Commercial. And so particularly for biking, the use of 6th Street is a really important connector route, 6th to Pennsylvania. And the width of that section is just enormous. It's got 8 lanes at that point, and there's no control between Commercial and 1st Street, and so it is essentially an 8-lane highway. And so the speeds are so incredibly high and the distance is so great that unless you are really, really strong, you're putting yourself at risk getting across there. So I would really highlight that one. Number 18 is Northport and School. That's another really important connection coming from along the lake on Woodward and up Marcy. You then would go up to School Road to get across Northport, and again, there's a wide gap to get to a signalized crossing, and because of the
Everybody okay with just, why don't you go ahead and finish?
Yeah, okay, because of the topography there with the hill, it's just really, really, really challenging. There is an underground tunnel that I don't think anyone uses. There's a school right there, so it's an important crossing. But especially with a bike, it's just completely not usable. And then the last one I wanted to point out was on the backside, actually, and it's number 43, so this is Main and Proudfit. And I was encouraged to see, I'm quite confident this is on Tom's radar. He's brought it up at both the Wilson and the Bassett corridor studies. This is an absolute critical missing link, and so you can see that, it's 43rd on this list, but in terms of bike network connectivity, for example, the need to do something there, whether it's a full signal or some other intervention, I think is very, very high. So I would put that out there for consideration as well. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else from the public who wants to speak? Okay, Brian, why don't you come back up? And Ken, I know you had a question, but I'd also like, after Ken says, I think it's important that that you summarize the feedback that you did get from the public by email, because not all the commissioners had an opportunity to look at that. So Ken, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, does bus routing sometimes increase the chances that you'd have a signal? I'm thinking of like Yellowstone and Mineral Point and Colony and Gammon. I know is it the 14 that has to make turns at those intersections, which I would guess as a bus would almost be impossible.
I heard Colony and Gammon, and the other one was, what was that?
Yellowstone and Mineral Point.
Buses were not a consideration for either of those two.
Okay.
I'm not saying that we don't listen to Madison Metro, but I can't think of any signal that we actually installed just for buses. If anyone was, it would probably have been the Ingersoll in East Washington many years ago, but I think that would still warrant a signal even without buses at that intersection.
Yeah, but we did install signals at both intersections, Conley and Gammon, and Yellowstone and Mineral Point. So those are, install signals over there recently. And actually because of that, Metro actually changed some of their routes, because some of the movements they cannot make.
That's what I was trying to figure out, is whether we followed your signal or what, but yeah, okay.
Some of the input that we got over the year was Commerce and Watts. I know that the Alder Skidmore has always been a proponent of that for many years, but we've got besides Alder Skidmore, there was 2 additional people that contacted our office. Elderberry and Pleasant View, we had 3 people contact us, but that was an intersection that I was thinking that based upon this input, we were going to put it on one of our intersections we should do a study for, but it is going to be having a roundabout put on that intersection, and I believe that this commission actually just approved the geometrics for that. So,
which number is that one, Brian?
That one is actually not on the list. It was never on the list.
Okay.
And now I was about to say we should add it, but let's skip it.
Be addressed. Okay.
Correct. Then we got Elderberry Injunction. That's number 24 on our list right now. We had 1 person request it. Gammon, McKenna, and New Washburn. That was the intersection that we had more people contact our office than any other intersection this year. We had 8 different people contact us. 1 person for Gilman, Wisconsin, which is 41 on the list. 1 person for New Washburn and South Point, and that one is not on the list because the person had contacted our office. We will do a study for it. I'm actually not expecting it to get very high up on the list.
What was that again, Brian?
That was New Washburn and South Point. It is not on our list, but we will, for a traffic signal.
Washburn, what?
Oh, there was a person that was very adamant about it.
South Point? Okay.
Packers and Schlimgen was was another intersection, and that one had 5 people. I think that was the second most number of people that called up our office. We've had quite a few requests for that over the past few years. We've done some studies on it recently, and our recommendation was no in the past. I've heard that there's been some changes to some school routes, which is going to make us reconsider it.
Right, there is a school right on, I think I forgot the name of the street, right in the back of Packers Avenue. So just this year, it become a charter school. So attendance has increased dramatically over there. So that definitely changed things a little bit. So that's a factor to consider.
What is that number of that one, Brian?
Right now, that's number 54 on our list.
Okay.
The alder for the Prairie Raymond signal, which is number 38, asked us to get some fresh hose counts to reevaluate that one. That just came in very recently. If we can get it down, without snow problems, we'll refresh that. Otherwise, we'll wait into next spring. Struck and Watts, it's a brand new. It's never been on our list before. So we're collecting counts for that one. Commercial and North. That one, it's just a little bit to the east of Packers. That's a new one. Cottage Grove and Ellen. That was actually recommended by our staff. We didn't have a different phone call or email. That's number 75 on the list. Dickinson and Williamson Street, that's number 9 on the list. Just one person. Odana and West Platte, that's number 55 on the list, just one person. I shouldn't say just, I apologize for that. Heartland and Old Sauk, there was one person. That's number 35 on the list. Packers and Tennyson, that one is never been on the list, so we will be collecting information for that one. And we're also adding Scott and Packers and Schroeder and Rayovac, number 28 on the list, was requested by the alder. And that is that's a summation of all of the requests that we've had. Our staff had discussed which ones that we were going to recommend further studies on, and those were 4 intersections, Commercial and Watts.
Can you give us numbers if you have them, Brian?
I apologize. That Commercial and Watts was number 6.
Okay.
Blount and Williamson, which was number 37. Gammon, McKenna, and New Washburn, which was number 17. And the Packers and Schlimgen, which was number 54. And then if there's other ones that the commission would like us to add based on public comment or based upon your own desires.
Okay, so what you're looking for from us is recommendations. You have the identified four of them, I think?
Yes.
That are at the top of your list for additional studies. And you said maybe 5 or 6 might be able to be studied in a year. Is that right, Yang?
That's typically about the most that we do.
Okay. And
then we'll report back, and usually we get like 2 months to go and do all of these studies. We'll, sometimes if it's a pedestrian thing, we might have to go out there and, count how many pedestrians. That's one of the reasons that we don't rank something by pedestrians, is if you think about the number of man hours it would take to go out to all the different intersections and get that kind of data on. So we were ranking it just based upon the easiest to collect, that would be, I shouldn't say easy, but let's say any other type of extra data that we would have to collect at every intersection, to have a fair ranking of all of those different criteria could be very, very laborsome.
okay, so Ash, and then whoa.
Just to that point, what you were talking about pedestrians, when all of these pedestrian warrants here are not satisfied, is that because of a lack of data or just because they don't satisfy the specific warrant under the MUTCD here?
There is, I would say the majority of the intersections, as far as the pedestrians goes, it would be because we haven't collected it, but more often than not, if the volumes that are required by the MUTCD warrant, if those volumes were there, and that's just an if, there's a very good chance that, we would have been asked to evaluate it based upon those, pedestrian criteria. Does that answer? Yep. Okay.
Okay, Ken, I thought you were next.
Just a question, what's the typical cost for a traffic signal? For example, the Yellowstone Mineral Point, that's a fairly large, you have a big, wide 6-lane and by 4-lane kind of thing.
I believe, and I can't remember if that was like somewhere in the $250,000 range. Jerry, did you do that, or was that Gretchen that?
Oops. If you put your light on, I can put your mic on. Thank you.
If I remember correctly, I think that one was right around 200,000. It might have been a little bit shy of that. So far of the ones I've done, the cheapest I've seen has been the Packers Darwin, which was around 140. The University Maple Terrace signal, we estimated at around $500,000, and I believe we're going to come in under budget, but at not significant, not like by hundreds of thousands, but so yeah, I would say they'd probably range if you have the infrastructure in place and you don't have to add any more conduit. So if you recently reconstructed a road and put the conduits underground, probably around 150 on a low end to if you have to completely reconstruct the road to put the signal in the infrastructure in, up to probably around $500,000.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. Is the university one, is that Target Hilldale? Correct?
Yeah, it's kind of near the Target's the closest.
The Darwin one, which Jerry said was on the cheaper end, when we did the Packers project, the Packers Northport project back in 2011, we anticipated that there would be a signal back then. So we put in, we had all the conduits and things crossing all of the streets. If we hadn't anticipated that, the price would have been much, much higher. So we do that with, whenever we're developing new plats, or, we take a look at where we think the main roads are gonna go, and if we, believe that, hey, we think this is gonna be a signal, we'll put in all that conduits. Every once in a while, we're wrong, and then they end up, we put in all the conduits at this intersection, but the developers had some different ideas later, and we put it at the next intersection with no conduits.
So about 150 to 250
to 350 or more.
To $500,000, depending on how complicated.
That's correct.
Okay. Jessica, I'm going to finish up this side and then get over to that side.
I have two questions. Yang, I think you mentioned that Madison has a lot of lights for a city its size. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure. That's a good question. Yeah. So right now, within City of Madison, we have about 300 traffic signals. So we maintain 350 traffic signals, but 50 of those actually belongs to other municipalities around us. Also UW, state, the county, so we do some of those for them as well. But with the city limits, we have 300. For our size, our population is a little bit over 250,000. So we do have, quite a lot traffic signals in the city already. So right now, I think it's, I would say, all the locations that are, really meet the signal warrants in MUTCD will probably be taken care of already. But there are other considerations. Even if it does not meet every warrant in MUTCD, if there are other considerations, for example, like we can correct crashes, we can have pedestrian cross different locations. Sometimes we do traffic signals as well.
So the standards that you mentioned that we're a little higher on is kind of a per capita and doesn't necessarily take into account like a metro area concept of
Right.
people commuting in from
Yeah,
a greater
just based on,
population area.
just based on population. Yeah.
And then my second question was, can you give me an example, as I'm kind of wrapping my head around this, can you give me an example of some of the other alternatives to signalization that you look at, and maybe the relative costs?
Sure, yeah. Sure, yeah, you can get
You know,
started.
sometimes with an intersection, you might just only have a one-lane approach, and that can, you know, cause some congestion problems. So you could, you know, just change the geometry of an intersection. You could add, you know, a right turn lane or a left turn lane on an approach so that, you know, the cars aren't all having to wait just to go one at a time. That can significantly reduce the delay. You can also, with other types of lane markings or geometric changes or signage, or you could, there are those RRFBs, those rectangular rapid flashing beacon type of things. There's, you know, sometimes just changing the speed on some approaches can make some things better. You know, like if you got vehicles that are going over 40 miles per hour on a road, you know, it's a lot more difficult for people to be entering and crossing than if you were to reduce the speed down to 35 or so. You know, that's another improvement that can make it easier for people to cross and safer for people to cross.
Yeah.
Any other?
Sure, yeah. Brian covered, you know, a lot of things. One thing I want to add is that another tool will also be the hawk signal. It's a kind of hybrid pedestrian beacon. So it's dark at most time, but when there is a pedestrian or bike going across the street, we bring up the signal. So we have one set up at Blair Street and Mifflin Street. But those, you know, it's kind of between a traffic signal and a flasher. So when it's fully functioning, it's functioning like traffic signal. But most of the time, it's just it's dark. So that's another tool that in our toolbox.
So just for an idea of relative cost, I'm guessing with, like, for example, geometrics, adding a turn lane sounds like on the more expensive end of some of these other options. How much does that cost relative to putting in a signal?
It all depends on whether or not you have the right-of-way available or if you got to acquire right-of-way. If the right-of-way is there, you know, sometimes it might be $20,000, $30,000 just to add, you know, a lane if it's a very simple type of addition, or, you know, it could even be up to $100,000 or so for adding a lane, or higher if you have to be purchasing the property for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Those are all different factors. We have to work with the other city departments to make sure that all of the other infrastructure that's under the roads and stormwater and stuff all works.
But it sounds like still significantly less than the low-end cost of a signal. Maybe the high end meets the low-end cost of a signal.
Right.
Okay.
Also, traffic signal, you know, has an annual maintenance cost to it.
Right. Okay.
It consumes electricity, so that's kind of
$3,000 to
factor.
$4,000 a year, depending upon how large of an intersection it is. You know, like, just put it like, you know, earlier I had mentioned about crashes. I could give you an example. When there was a four-way stop intersection on Raymond Road. They had petitions. They had a lot of people come into a meeting like this. And, you know, they were saying about how unsafe it was, you know, for people to be crossing, or how many crashes, they almost, you know, near misses with vehicles every day at this all-way stop. Well, we had about 2 to 3 crashes per year for like 20-some years at the intersection. I mean, but there was near misses every day. Well, once the signal went in 12 months, there was 13 reported crashes. You know, it's not, traffic signals are not a panacea for, you know, all ills.
That all, Jessica?
Thank you.
Okay, so I have Rebecca, Steve, Gary, and then Bill. So Rebecca?
Yeah, on that, traffic signals are not panaceas for all ills. And I really like the concept of that Grant brought up of having a toolkit, like, you know, general road safety toolkit that includes signals, stop sign, rapid flashing beacons, hawk signals, also the speed radar signs, which were just installed in my neighborhood. Thank you, Yang. And I actually noticed people, I don't know if it's only because it's the second day they're using them, but people on Northport have been braking when they see that sign. So that's kind of been an issue at that school in Northport. I think the issue with the signal is like the WISDOT says you can't have it because of the hill coming inbound, that it's dangerous to have a traffic signal. Anyway, but hopefully, you know, that can be some traffic calming measure. And also this other program we have about neighborhood traffic calming devices. And I would just love to see all of these things presented to the public and this commission as sort of a package of road safety tools that we can use, so that instead of saying, okay, we're not going to put, you know, there's no traffic signal at Packers and Schlimchen. Well, there is a rapid flashing beacon there that got installed last year, and so things have been tried, and so we can understand, like, more globally what's going on with these intersections. At this crazy new Washburn and South Point, like, has there been requests for in that neighborhood traffic calming device program, which is basically just an email to the traffic engineer, right? But is that different than these, you know, specific requests for signals? And I'd just like to see a more comprehensive presentation to the public and to the commission about that, because I know you guys are all thinking, you're already thinking about it that way.
We're doing them all
But
separately.
you're doing it separately, and it would be really good to have, you know, to have us be able to, you know, parse these out as, you know, a whole toolkit of things we can do. So that was, and kind of also on that note, I was surprised to not see the Troy and Hovde intersection studied for an all-way stop, because that, I mean, that, I have made that request every.
The all-way stops that are on here, it's not a study for an all-way stop.
Oh.
Those are intersections that are all-way stops today that people want to have a traffic signal at.
I see.
I
So, yeah,
apologize
so
for not
there's
being
not,
clear.
so, again, these are probably requests that have been made by residents through the neighborhood traffic calming. They've been made directly by me to David Dreyer in the past, multiple times, about that intersection in particular, because of the speeding that goes on at shift change time to Mendota and Central Wisconsin Center, and people having like literally not being able to get out of their driveways on Troy Drive. And one of the, you know, Metro is balking at speed bumps because it's a Metro route. It's like one of the two Metro routes on the entire north side, and they've got to make their times. But one of the things that I talked to David Dreyer about was an all-way stop at that particular intersection, since it's at the top of a hill where people, you know, people are really kind of getting speeds one way and the other, and speeding really quickly and making it hard for people to get out of their driveways. And this is a 25-mile-an-hour zone, and they're going like 50 miles an hour sometimes. So,
I don't know if that was looked at or not, but I'll
yeah,
certainly make sure.
I really want to underline that like 5 times. Yeah.
We'll check on it, make sure it's gets studied.
Yeah, like I mean, I think with Dreyer, we talked about maybe an all-way stop might be the best traffic calming for that, because, you know, it wouldn't have any of these warrants, but it is an issue of pretty bad speeding at a couple times a day. Okay.
Is that it then, Rebecca? Okay, Steve, then Gary, then Bill.
Just for background, I just want in my 10th year to say that I would echo what most of my fellow alders would say. This is the #1 thing we get emailed about. So, which is why we saved traffic calming funds a couple years ago in the budget, and Alder Ahrens did that. It really is. I think #1 with a bullet. I get more stuff about this than crime. So I want to echo that new Washburn McKenna-Gammon intersection as someone who travels that corridor all the time, as long as you can sync it up with the Schrader Gammon light. It's just, I can't believe more people aren't killed there or reporting their crashes, because so many people take risky maneuvers to get out of there and cross that traffic.
Did you say which one?
New Washburn McKenna Gammon.
Or mechanic.
It's,
Yeah, it's where they-
it's both.
it's where they really
Gammon in the
switch.
north, and then in the south, it's.
Right.
So number 17 on the list?
Number 17.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I would like to echo my fellow alder to the northeast of me. Prairie and Raymond is another intersection which might not meet all the warrants, but a lot of people are taking risky maneuvers because it's such a big intersection, and it's going to be a very expensive traffic light if it's ever put in there. I understand that, but I think that that really does warrant some investigation because of that corridor is going to have a lot. It's going to continue to get more traffic in it as well. And the other thing I was going to say, and Yang knows this all too well because you're going to get another email from me about it. It's also the dedicated turn signals at intersections that are already signalized that are sometimes frustrating or concerning to people. So like the one that you know that I've emailed about for my entire alderhood is Maple Grove and PD, for example. So
I think we did recently do
you
some
did recently
changes
do
and-
one, and then there's still one that's left, and the first one was put in. And so pretty soon it will be fully signalized in every direction, which is what everyone wants.
Especially if that gets extended down the way Verona wants it.
But I mean, I think you all have criteria for that too. That should be part of this discussion, because I do think it's in the toolkit of things that can happen. And there are a lot of places in the city that have the potential for a dedicated turn signal that we don't have one. And people are yielding, turning on red, everything that you all know about.
Protected.
Yeah, protected arrow, yes, yeah, protected left turn. But thank you for all the work that you're doing. And I'm sorry for the emails I'll be sending tomorrow.
Okay, Gary and then Bill.
Okay, this is new ground for me personally, though I do kind of understand the system. The 4 items that you identified as for further study, that's an administrative decision that you've made? It doesn't come through this?
It's a recommendation from
It's
staff
a
at this
recommendation,
time.
it'll be a recommendation which we will
Yeah,
deal with at our next meeting?
No, it's a recommendation now for the commission to consider for further study.
We would
So,
like the commission tonight to agree on the list of intersections that we're going to be going forth in the next 2 months and doing a detailed study to report back to this commission in 2 months.
And then when you come back, we would consider approving traffic signals?
Correct. Then you would be
So it's not
approving our
approving tonight?
report. Yes.
Want to try that again? You look like
No,
you still
it's
have
on informational, and I didn't understand the scheme of things. But I would say,
Yeah, that's a little misleading.
yeah, well, it probably shouldn't be, but,
Well, we
I'm just-
debated that at great length, whether we were asking for an actual action. And it's more like when traffic engineering comes with recommendations and suggestions about geometry. And it comes to one meeting under informational, and we make a lot of suggestions and recommendations, and then they bring it back for approval. So we likened it to that.
okay. Well, and you mentioned
So-
4 that you're going to do further study that are on the list, and I'm
And if
just
you'd like
wondering.
me to say why we do them, I could try to.
No, no, you said it already, that's not the problem.
Okay.
But I'm wondering your reaction to the suggestion about Packers and Sixth that was mentioned by our speaker. Where does that fall in the realm of further study?
If you want it to be further studied, we'll further study it. Just like the
I mean, you have a
intersection
limit.
that you added, the Prairie and,
Sure.
we would like you to only add a couple, but
Yeah.
you
yeah,
can subtract
okay,
some.
I'd wonder-
Rebecca and Bill, I haven't forgotten about you.
I just want to respond directly to that.
Okay.
And it's what I meant to say. I have it in my notes here, but I forgot to say it when I had the mic. Is that very soon, like within a month or a month and a half, there is going to be a special area plan process started around that includes Packers and Sixth, that will also include
Okay.
probably Packers and Schlimgen, that includes that monster intersection of Packers and Aber, Packers and Commercial. So I think that
It might be touched
those
upon.
things,
Yeah.
well, it definitely will be touched upon, especially that missing link for bikes.
Okay.
So those things, I would say, maybe don't move forward with Packers and Schlimgen study, maybe wait for that special area plan work to get done, so you're not, if we're gonna completely, maybe get federal money to completely change that whole, we don't know, but
I
there's,
think right now, we should probably just, say that we'll still study it, but we'll put in the report that we could, consider what's going to be going on and whether or not that would justify waiting versus
Yeah.
doing something sooner.
right, collect data that you can contribute to the special area plan, or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're to Bill.
The only question I guess I have is, we haven't spoken very much about four-way stops. And is that part of the process?
It wasn't part of this, at least not for now, not yet.
So that gets done independent of this?
Independent. We actually have some different meetings that deal with all-way stops. We have another, our operations
But it seems to me
section
like,
works on stop signs.
but it seems to me like that all-way stop is another one of those tools,
Oh, it is definitely one of those tools.
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
and
So
when
I
we
mean,
are
some of the places where the city's installed four-way stops, they work reasonably well or very well for a long period of time until finally the warrants for higher volumes
Yes.
pick up, and then
So, yeah,
the
that's
four-way stop can't handle it anymore. and you
Right.
Go to signals, but it seems to me like, I don't want to overlook
I
four-way
That's
stop.
great,
totally agree with
that's
you.
a great comment and a great
Yeah.
question as well.
Yeah.
So let me kind of answer that a little bit on that. So the reason why traffic signal is a little bit different, and years ago, city set up the process like this to talk about traffic signal. That's mainly because the cost and the impact of traffic signal. If you think about it, traffic signal is a big commitment from the city. It costs a lot of money to install, costs a lot of money to maintain. So that's the kind of cost for the taxpayer. Another impact is when you install traffic signal, it really creates a lot of change in the neighborhood. As we typically know, traffic signals attract a lot of traffic. It does help traffic to move through there, but it does attract a lot of traffic. So typically, it really change the area much more than other treatments such as always stop. So always stop, for example, it's much easier to maintain. It's very cheap, and it has much lower impact. So that's why many years ago there's a process set up like this for traffic signals for us to review it with the commission and get approval from the commission to install any traffic signals in the city. But there is not that process for other tools, like always stop, like stop signs, flashers, like speedboards. So those will be working with the neighbors, we're working with the others. So we will, staff will make an administrative decision on what to do over there. So I think that process kind of makes sense, but I think we heard really good suggestions from the body. So we're going to do a presentation talking about comprehensive toolbox that we have to address different concerns from the citizens, and we're also actually thinking about maybe imagine some update our process for some other things we do. I think those are reasonable as well. Like how do we decide where to put the RFBs, the speed boards? So I guess it's a good idea to be open-minded on maybe a new process for that as well. So we'll be working on that.
Did you notice that the last section on this thing had intersections that met the warrant, which was Carolyn Gorham? For my first, I don't know how many years of doing this, Alder Verveer used to come to every single one of those meetings, and he used to say that he was here to speak about that intersection and to state that his neighborhood did not want that signal. And I finally convinced him that I agree with him. You don't have to come to all these meetings. Well,
Ash?
and that's because, an intersection can meet these warrants, but yet we can find with an engineering study that it's not needed. There can be plenty of gaps, especially on a one-way street. created by some other intersections that make it very easy for. And there are neighborhoods that also don't want a signal because they don't want cut through their neighborhood. No, I'm not saying that's a reason to say yes or no, but there are some neighborhoods that have been very adamant about that reason for not wanting a traffic signal at particular locations.
Ash?
Yeah, I was curious about where roundabouts fit into this because, a lot of the signalized intersections do get turned into roundabouts at some point, or roundabouts are installed instead of a traffic signal. How does that fit into the warrants process?
I would say it doesn't, but it could, because, if the warrants show that there needs to be, some additional way of, providing, orderly right-of-way to vehicles and, to make the operations better, to decrease crashes, roundabouts can be a very good alternative, which I did not list when you were asking for different alternatives. Quite often, especially in the CBD area, you don't typically have the right-of-way to, get the extra space that you need to have a roundabout. There's also some other disadvantages about roundabout, and that's for pedestrian crossings. Now, a roundabout that is designed correctly, the way the vehicles are approaching, they need to slow down and things. So some roundabout engineers will say that, well, these are great for pedestrians, but there's a lot of pedestrians that still do not feel at all comfortable about stepping out and, and assuming that the motorist is going to be yielding to them.
You also heard some instruments from the blind community.
Exactly.
Right. Also, there are lots of requests from this community about traffic signals, but there are very few requests about roundabout. Typically, when we bring up that we like to consider roundabout, typically people will oppose to it.
Ooh,
So,
A while ago, the state DOT was actually requiring, I'm not sure if it was a Fed or only the state requirement, but any time that a new signal was to be installed, they had to do a study to show if a roundabout would work.
yeah, we still do that, for larger projects. We compare different alternatives. For example, the Pleasant View project that this body approved last time. We, did the signal alternative, did the roundabout alternative, so did a different analysis, trying to which one, works, what works best. So for that case, we found that roundabout would be the way to go.
We used to have a traffic signal at Lean, Thompson, and Zaire. It's over, on the southeast side of the East Town Mall area. And with that signal, at this time of year, during the heavy shopping, there would be some very long delays at that intersection. Now that the roundabout's been put in, it's no problem at all.
That's actually a great roundabout. It's very well marked, it flows great, and I'm not a fan of roundabouts normally, but they're growing on me. They're growing on me.
That is a good one.
Yeah. Did you have more, Ash?
And I don't know if this is the right time to bring this up, but in terms of us approving this list today, I don't feel like the only thing I can go off of is the warrants and this list that you provided. So unless we feel like there's an issue with the process, I don't know enough about the different signals in the city to be able to recommend that another one be studied instead of this one. And I do also like the comments that the citizen Grant made, and what Alder Campbell was saying is there does seem to be some sort of opportunity for us to maybe improve this process a little bit. Maybe the MUTCD warrants process is, in some places it might be a little bit rigid, and we need to maybe change a little bit of things to focus on the values and the priorities of the city. But having said that, at this point, if we have to make this decision, I feel like I would be just going off of the traffic signal priority list that's available to me today.
Well, let me just restate what I understand we're trying to accomplish tonight, and that's to get feedback. There were 4 that were mentioned by Brian, and in my notes, Steve mentioned Prairie and Raymond, and Gary brought forward Packers and 6th. as like a half a dozen that we're suggesting that they bring us more information on. So we're not asking for approval tonight. We're just asking for, with the information that you've heard tonight, do you think this is the right priority? Do you have some other suggestions? So that is that?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So the list here, is not, something to approve, but rather a tool to help the commission members understand, where they are according to the warrants. We do agree with you. You had a very good point that, we do think, MBTCD, the warrants, sometimes a little bit rigid. So, that's a good reference, that's a national standards. So we should definitely consider a lot about that. But there are also other, community values that, we can consider as well. Also in engineering judgment, that we can be flexible. Yeah.
Sometimes these intersections, they can be ranked, number 1, number 2, number 3, but yet that doesn't mean that they're going to be signalized number 1, number 2, number 3. In fact, number 1, number 2, number 3, may or may not ever be signalized. Some other intersections could, rise to the top based upon any of the other criteria or based upon one of those engineering studies that we do. Because, let's say this thing is showing that there's all this volume. So because there's all this heavy volume, or looking at one of the delay studies where they just got a graph, and we find where that point is on the graph based upon the major street volume and the side street volume, and boy, it meets the warrant. So then what we do is we go out there and we look at it and actually measure the real delay that's out there. And then we find out that, no, it's not as bad at this intersection. Therefore, we're recommending that, if we were to signalize this intersection, we're likely going to have decreased, operation. The operation of the intersection is going to decrease. The safety is going to decrease, rather than, we want to look at every intersection with the hope of improving operation and or safety. Whether that be for motor vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians, we want to have that happen. That's why intersections should not be signalized unless, a report shows that, a study indicates that would be expected.
Yeah, so again, the goal of the staff presenting information in front of this body today is that because we got a long list of requests from the citizens, but we don't have indefinite resources to do all of them. So we can only do maybe 5, 6 of them in more detail. And the staff has recommendations. We want to kind of brief the commission on that to see if the commission has any input. So if, whether we can, we should go ahead to, stick with staff recommendations, or maybe pick up a couple more from this commission to do more study, or maybe, change some intersections on the staff's recommendation list. And then at a couple months later, the next meeting, so we really present more detailed reports on the few that we focus on, and then we'll need approval from this body, where put the signals for 2019.
So what I've heard so far is there were 4 that were brought forward, and I didn't hear anybody say not to study those. And I heard support from Steve for Prairie and Raymond, and from Gary for Packers and Sixth, which is what Grant brought forward. Go ahead. Oh, wait. Where are you? There you are.
As long as there's another process, I was satisfied.
What did you want more information on that intersection? Because if you do, that's what you would need to say tonight.
Okay, leave it then. Okay.
Or to add it, you're saying.
Bill, did you have something?
There's going to be a study, you might as well.
You know, as a new commission member, you're asking, at this for, I don't have any better information at this time.
Yeah.
This
It's
year.
hard. I know this is hard.
And I guess, and what you're saying is the ones that you have put forward is you've taken a look at, obviously, all the requests that the alders have submitted, which it sounds like that's always ongoing process. And these are the best
that you've made the best judgment. And I can
That's
say
correct.
that that's.
Pretty much you can say that
Yeah. That's
especially
what I
if an
would go with.
intersection has rise towards the top of this
Yeah.
list.
Right.
Like, we have studied these things in the past.
Absolutely.
And I really want to be clear that every single intersection, I know I stated it before, but I'll state it again. We read every single crash report at every single intersection.
Yeah.
And that's why, so whether it was, those are, pedestrian, bicycle crashes, any kind of crashes, we read every single one of them. So, an intersection that does have a safety problem is definitely, going to be, safety is paramount.
And Yang, if you could do something for me, we didn't bring the neighborhood traffic management report to this meeting because we thought we wouldn't have enough time for it. But could you just talk about that a little bit? Because that relates to some of the things we've been talking about tonight, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of, ready to this. That's kind of, another kind of tool in our toolbox. We have a program similar to traffic signal priority list, a program called the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program. So that's the city setting aside certain funds each year to look at how can we address some of the traffic concerns from neighborhoods. The measures considered will be, speed humps, traffic circles, islands, things like that.
So some of the toolbox you were talking about.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So initially, we put on tonight's agenda because staff is ready to make a presentation here. But because of we want to give the company a better chance for you guys to go to the BRT
Which we probably
presentation,
won't
which
make.
already started. Right. So we're going to do that in January.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so are people comfortable? Are you comfortable if to do 6? Is that too many?
No, that's absolutely fine. When we do our report, we don't just say, yes or no to signal. We do a nice full report and we'll look during that process to see whether like an island or, some other type of thing can address the problem. So, it's not that we just are, just looking at it with our blinders on.
Okay, everybody comfortable with the half dozen we've talked about? Okay, so we'll see this again next time, or in a couple months, right, Brian?
Correct.
Okay, great, excellent discussion, and this is all tied in with what we've been talking about with regard to traffic safety and our goal. So as we put our work plan together, this is something that, when I think about this in terms of our orientation guide as well, having a presentation on what are the different tools that we can use to improve traffic safety. I mean, a link to that document in our orientation guide would be great, because the next time somebody's talking about these things, then, we'll be able to say, well, you can go read that report or look at that presentation. So. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda is traffic engineering department referrals, and we have the North Ingersoll Street this evening. We do have Grant Foster wanted to speak about it, but following the same process, I'd like to hear what staff has to say so that we can, understand what's being discussed, and then hear from the public, and then take questions and discussion from the commission. If you'd like to introduce yourselves, and then.
I'm Alexandra Heinritz, and I'm a traffic engineer.
I'm Chris Dawson, and I'm in engineering.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so I'll just help do a kind of a background on this project overall. So for 2019, we have a reconstruction project planned for North Ingersoll Street from Sherman Avenue to Gorham, and on Elizabeth Street from Ingersoll to North Few Street. So as part of that, we had our public information meeting a couple weeks ago, and based on some comments and feedback we got at that meeting and from Alder Zellers, we looked into some options for North Ingersoll Street because it is kind of a unique section in that it is a one-way street that is very wide. It is a 36-foot wide street from face of curb to face of curb, but all of that is one way. So one suggestion that came up from that meeting that we've been looking into further is creating a contraflow bike lane that can help bicyclists navigate that one way a little better. And kind of the way this nicely ties into our overall bike infrastructure is that they would be able to continue on Ingersoll past Gorham, where Ingersoll becomes a two-way street, and they would be able to make it to the bike boulevard on Mifflin in a pretty convenient fashion. So that's something we're more seriously considering, and another aspect were some bump outs to reduce pedestrian crossings. So to go over kind of the geometry of that, I'll hand it off.
Yeah, so here's the cross-section for the proposed bike facility on Ingersoll. We're going to keep the parking on both sides, as well as keep them at 8 feet, so it gives parking enough space, while keeping the 36-foot face-to-face street, so not changing the width of the street at all. But we want to propose a 5-foot contraflow bike lane with a 2 feet buffer on both sides, just to give the bikes, a little more space and comfort on the street, as well as proposing also the Sharrow for the flow of the traffic. So going with the traffic is instead of its individual bike lane. And so this is a good option for bikes, like Chris said, to connect to major bike routes, as well as bike routes going towards the Capitol. So this is the cross-section. Should we do comments for this first and then show you the bump outs, or?
Why don't you make a presentation on everything?
Okay.
And then we'll hear from the public, and then we'll have questions and discussion.
And then this is a very rough kind of like sketch of what we're thinking of putting in. So during the public meeting, people mentioned having troubles crossing Ingersoll, or it's just too wide.
With the width of the crossing.
So we are proposing a bump out to make that crossing a little shorter. It's a 4-foot bump out, as well as some bump outs near Sherman Avenue was a suggestion, just because I guess there have been some issues with people turning onto Ingersoll, right or left, and that going the wrong way. So that is an issue, and that's a safety concern. And so, having these bump outs would hopefully prevent that, as well as making that corridor a little safer. But this is just a rough sketch, and so these are just ideas, pretty much, and we wanted to bring you. So that's pretty
Okay,
much it.
so what you're looking for this evening, again, is similar to the, when we look at geometry, we want to get feedback from people. Okay, so Grant, why don't we hear from you and then open it up for discussion and suggestions, comments?
Thank you. Seems like a great idea. Doesn't sound like there's anybody here arguing against it. One question or comment, I guess, around the bump outs. I'm not sure if that's drawn to scale or not. But I would assume that where the bump outs are, particularly the one by Elizabeth, that would be in lieu of parking, and that it wouldn't be a sort of squeezing of the cross section. And if that's the case, then and obviously with the turning radiuses in mind, just maximizing those to make them as wide as possible would be one recommendation. And the other one I have is to consider for the cross section with the counterflow lane, considering using the same amount of space that's there, but instead of striping at 8-2, 5-2, considering doing this 7-3, 4-3. And what that would do is, again, it's the same amount of space for everything to happen, but the 7 foot could help make sure that cars park as close to the curb as possible. The 3-foot wide buffers would provide an additional amount of comfort, again, for the same amount of space that's used. And a 4-foot bike lane would work quite well as long as it has the buffers on both sides. So there's been some good research that shows that kind of a striping can really help, especially less experienced riders, put themselves in the appropriate position. Otherwise, there's a tendency for them to ride too close to the parked cars. So I think there's an opportunity to maybe do that, or if you wanted to keep that parking lane still at 8 feet, you might be able to go from the 11-foot down to a 10-foot travel lane, just to help skinny things up and keep car speeds low as well. So thank you.
Okay. All right, if you guys would like to come back up. What comments? Okay, so I saw Ken and then Rebecca.
I don't know. I would suggest that instead of the diagonal striping, you put between the Sharrow and the bike lane a double, if not triple yellow line. I have observations that people on Sharrows think that even though the bike is right where you have it right there, that this is a passing opportunity, and that the oncoming bicyclist would have unwarranted confidence in using that lane. Anyway, it's just a suggestion, because I see when given the opportunity, people cheat, car drivers cheat on Sharrows.
Okay, Rebecca and then Bill.
I'm sorry if I missed it, but at the Ingersoll and Sherman intersection, is that still going to be a free flow right turn, no stop? From Ingersoll to Sherman?
Sherman, yeah, I believe so.
So you're not,
No, I think we're gonna put a stop sign. No, so there's,
currently, there's a stop
Yeah,
sign on
there's a stop
Sherman, but not on Ingersoll. So traffic
Okay.
just flows from Ingersoll to Sherman there with
and
no stop sign.
we're gonna look more into that, but I believe we're, gonna keep that the same.
You're not going to put a stop sign
No.
there. Did that come up in the public meeting at all?
There was something that was mentioned. It was kind of in the same line of thought as the bump outs there as well. So that's, that intersection in general, especially with if we are to put in a contraflow lane, would need some kind of treatment. So I suppose it's a traffic engineering decision to be made there. But I guess short answer, yes, it did come up at the meeting.
But you're still kind of
Yeah, we have to
figuring
look
out
a
what's
little
going
more
to
into
work.
that.
Okay, thanks.
Bill?
Several
then
questions.
Jessica?
Are trucks allowed on Ingersoll?
I don't know that they're not allowed. I just don't know that they would
So
be
it's,
have
yeah.
a purpose.
So the city has an official truck route. Those are, kind of for the through movement of trucks.
Yeah.
But, delivery trucks can go to their destination anywhere in the city.
Yeah,
But they have
yeah.
to,
And
use
make
the truck
deliveries
route as
and
much
so
as
forth.
possible.
But
So Ingersoll is not a part of that official truck route.
Okay, and there's no buses on Ingersoll, or there is?
They're not.
Not
I don't
this
think there's a
section.
bus
So,
on Ingersoll.
again, your thought is to make, instead of the 11-foot Sharrow, is to have a 10-foot?
No. All I'm saying is, I've seen on Sharrows, if drivers see that the bicyclist is in the middle of the Sharrow.
Yep.
And they would
They'll try to
see all
pass.
that room between the bicyclist and parked cars on their left, they would shoot the gap. And they would basically be going right into a contra bicyclist.
Bicycling,
And you
yeah.
need something to tell them, no, you have to
Stay on your.
this side of the line.
Stay on the line, okay,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, Jessica?
Okay, well, I had several questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill, go ahead, and I'll come
So-
back to you, Jessica.
So then, is there any reason, the 10-foot, you could make that Sharrow a 10-foot lane?
I mean, it's a possibility.
Does the city have 10-foot
Um,
lanes anyplace?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I like making the suggestion of the 7-foot parking and the 3-foot and a 4-foot lane and the 3-foot separation, because As a bicyclist, I think I would be more comfortable with, with more width away from the cars, but I don't know how much traffic is out there in Inger, so.
That is one aspect of it, I suppose, that is worth mentioning, is that it is very low volume. So there's not a whole lot of traffic traveling on this. It's really just the residents that are trying to get to their homes.
Yeah, okay.
It's not really a throughway for anybody outside of the immediate area in most terms.
You had also suggested that you're looking at a 4-foot bump out? But if you're gonna, with that, I mean, you're definitely gonna restrict parking in that area, so is there any reason why you couldn't make that bump out even more?
Yeah, we should make the bump out larger. As
So
large as we
I guess
can,
one of
without
the concerns there was, at least right now, how we have it proposed is a 4-foot, because this is the low point in Ingersoll where it meets Elizabeth, and to make the grades work out at, right now they're at minimum grade for drainage purposes.
Okay.
So as soon as you change
Drainage
the curb
issue-
line,
drainage
it
is another-
can
okay.
create those drainage issues. So right now, it's still working around some issues with it even just being that 4-foot.
Okay.
So we're kind of starting there and playing with that.
Okay, Jessica?
Yeah, my first question was, can you repeat, I didn't catch what this reconstruction stretch is. This goes from Sherman to
Gorham?
Gorham, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just a couple
So
of
it's
blocks.
one more block off of the frame here.
Okay, and then my other question was similarly regarding the 7-foot parking, how does that compare to other parking lanes? And, you know, what's kind of the standard range and what can you compare it to in other areas?
So the standard, typically, traffic engineers going for is 8. But we do have quite a few in the city with mark 7. Especially when the spaces are tight. A good example is near University, Randall Avenue near Monroe Street. So that has a 7-foot parking lane, 5-foot bike lane. So even the bike lane is pretty narrow. That's because streets are rather narrow. We want to have a reasonable sidewalk, some terrace area. So we did that. For that area, it's working reasonably well. So I think we can look into reduce the parking to 7 here, especially there's going to be a buffer right next to it. So I think that's a good suggestion we should consider. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other comments or recommendations? So do you have what you need then from the commission?
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Okay. Crossover report. Rebecca, Ash, any crossover report from the last TPBB? Oh, sorry. Getting tired here.
Ash did the crossover report of TC to TPPB on Monday night, so I'll do this. And actually, he and I are going to meet at the end of this week to
Okay.
figure out, what kind of format we
Sure.
want to report in and how we're going to share the responsibilities. So we'll be a lot more organized moving forward. But we met on Monday, and we had 2 items on our agenda. One, the winter bike maintenance facility recommendations that a subcommittee of the former Ped Bike Motor Vehicle Commission developed, and then staff responses to that, and to the transit priority presentation that we got here today. And out of those 2 things, we had some, I would say, very good discussion about the need for that body to actually make policy specifically around the winter bike facility maintenance, to give staff guidelines and direction, but also to start thinking about, and I believe this was Ash's suggestion, that we do a retreat and really dig into our authority, the TPPB's authority to create policy guidelines for this body to be able to make decisions on things like, signal priority and particular projects. So you can look forward to that work happening, I don't know, hopefully within the next year, hopefully within the next 6 months. But we did have a very full discussion of, the newness of TPPB, what is its role, what can we actually do vis-a-vis, directing corridor studies, directing, setting out priorities for actual construction projects, and of course this other issue, the winter bike facility maintenance thing, and there will no doubt be others, but that's, I would say we're moving in a positive direction and kind of learning as we're going.
Okay.
I don't know if you have anything else to add, Ash.
Great, thank you so much. Next, Yang, if you want to talk about tour and orientation for traffic engineering and parking utility. We had a conversation about this at our agenda meeting.
Sure, yeah.
It was
Again-
requested by people at our last meeting.
Right. Yeah, again, thank you to the commission members for making the request. We think it's a really good idea. And also, I believe that our staff are very proud to show the commission members around and tell you guys about what we do, give you a bit more information, so to help you to make better decisions for our important transportation issues in the future. So with that, we look at some options. So right now, our recommendation would be, because we probably don't want to wait for too long, but some of our operations, including parking and the traffic, probably will be outside. For example, we're looking at the traffic signals, looking to the cabinets, looking to street lights, and observing some of parking operations. It's going to be outside, so it's going to be cold. So we are concerned about some of the accommodations for some of the members. So we're thinking maybe we can do 2 tours. This will be combined for traffic engineering and parking utility. One we can do pretty soon over the winter. That will be all inside. That will be looking at our offices, and also we share a shop on Sales Street. We can do that as well. So we can look at some of our operations, like how we make signs, how we make traffic signals, and some of the parking maintenance, and also our radio shop, so you can have an idea of what's going on. So that'll be, we're given different people tours before. They're really interested in looking at, so they did realize that how much stuff we take on. So that would be a good one. We can do that anytime during the winter. That's okay. But we can wait for when the weather becomes warmer. We do another tour. That'll be looking at parking garages, parking operations, and we can find some traffic signals nearby, some streetlights nearby. We can open up the cabinets, so for you guys to to look into it. So that's the plan right now. So if that's sounds like a reasonable plan to commissioners, we can start to work on our schedule.
Okay. Bill?
The question, Yang, on the signal system control, is that in the municipal building, or where is that located?
So that's a good question. So for of course for the physical part, that's out in the field, but we do have a management system. Actually, it's pretty state of art. It's a pretty advanced system that we have. We also have a traffic management center, with a lot of cameras showing on big screen TV.
Right.
So we can we definitely can show that.
Where
over
is
the
that
winter.
located? Where is it?
Right across the street
Is
in
it
our
in
office.
municipal building?
Right.
Is that new?
Go ahead, Ash.
Sorry,
Yeah.
is that a new?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So we, the office is renovated recently. But the opportunity we kind of build a traffic management center. We used to have just a couple of TVs that we hook up to the system, and we have engineers keeping an eye during the day, during peak hours. If anything come up, we can do things to help. But now we have a much better setup than we had before. That will be it serves two main functions. First is a day-to-day operation. So we have staff keeping an eye on the traffic system, traffic cameras. So when things happen, when crashes happen, or when a utility company closes lanes on East Washington Avenue, working on things, and we saw a long backup, we'll come in to do timing change to help out. Also, a second function would be during special events. For example, Freak Fest or a flooding event. We have to close a lot of streets. We need more staff working on the system. We have capacity to put in more workstations in the center, so that multiple staff can work on it. In the future, though, there's also opportunity. So I'm kind of working with the MPO, the Madison Area Transportation Planning Board, on a potential maybe for a regional traffic management center. So you really use that space, open it up, maybe think about some funding mechanism, and then we can let our partners in our neighboring communities, like say the Fitchburg, Middleton, maybe they can send a staff over here as well if there has a need. So those are the kind of the current use and some future plans for the center.
Okay. Other comments or questions on the tours? It's all part of the orientation that we talked about last time, so a lot of good suggestions. Okay, reports of other committees for information only. Those are all available in Logistar, correct? Announcements and future agenda items. Patrick sent out an email on Tuesday reminding everybody about completing your statement of interest forms. So if you've done that already, thank you very much. Reminder that they need to be done on a timely basis or you're on a bad list. I forget what happens if you're on the bad list, but it's not good. I know it's not good. And just remember that you have to complete it, and you get a big green mark, and then you get an email saying it's completed, because there's a couple of steps to doing that. I know from experience what happens if you don't do that. So, BRT kickoff meeting. Well, as Rebecca said, we failed to get over there. So David Trowbridge had volunteered to come to the Transportation Commission and do a BRT presentation for us. So we will take him up on that. I would encourage you to go online, and if you need a link, we can certainly ask Patrick or Yang or somebody to send it out to people, because there's a survey that you can do online, and you can provide your feedback online. So they're looking for people to attend a kickoff session or to fill out the survey, because they want everybody to provide their feedback. So you can take advantage of that. So would it be helpful to get a link to that? Okay, so if one of you or somebody could send out a link to that survey, that would be great. I think maybe I found it in Facebook. I'm not sure how I ended it up, but it's in my Facebook now. I think so. I think we did too. But if you could just shoot it back out to people so they can click on the link, that'll make it easy for everybody. And also tomorrow, and I just heard about this a couple days ago, Madison's Greener and Smarter Future begins now. Tomorrow, between 6:30 and 8:30 in room 260 of the Madison Municipal Building. Yang, if you want to maybe talk about this a little bit, there's some presentations and discussions on the future of Madison's transportation system, so if anybody's interested.
Sure, yeah. So it's going to be a presentation from Tom Lynch, Mahath, Joyce from Fleet Services, and me. So we're going to be talking about the efforts that are going on in the city to make the transportation system greener and smarter. For example, some of the green fleet initiative that is ongoing at the Fleet Services, and some of the smart city initiative that we are doing as well, which has recently won a major national award. And also, Tom is going to talk about some of the transit initiatives that's really good, like a BRT and a whole package. So those are developed because we made some presentations at the Mayor's Public Work Information Meeting. And the mayor had the idea of doing kind of a community engagement on this. So that will be going to be moderated by a professor from UW with the Nelson Institute of Environmental Studies. Actually, they did one about 2 weeks ago. Had really good attendance. About 120 people attend that event. It's in the same room. So there also may be a chance that the city and UW are going to make it maybe ongoing talk series. But that's to be determined. Because next year, Madison is going to host actually an international conference. I think it's called Adaptivity Conference, talking about mainly about the environmental issues, and also every year, the National Institute of Environmental Studies, they do Earth Day conference every year, so that those two events are back in back. So there might be ongoing talks leading to that final major event. Yeah, so that's kind of update on the talks. Yeah, it's 6:30 to 8:30 cross street at room 260. That's a beautiful courtroom that was restored with the renovation project. So if you haven't been there, it's really good opportunity to check it out. It's a great room.
Well, I didn't want people to, I'm subscribed to the mayor's blog, and it was available on there. Rebecca, did you have something?
For future agenda items?
Yes. Oh, I just had one other announcement. Just reminder, I think everybody knows the December 26th meeting is canceled, so our next meeting would be January 9th. So, okay, go ahead, Rebecca.
I just want to kind of uplift and underscore this idea of us coming back to their processes for approving traffic safety interventions and or learning more about them and or making decisions around them, and specifically what we talked about with the signal priority list around getting a comprehensive presentation of all of the tools, including the neighborhood traffic and all of that. And I think that might be worth, that might be developed into something you could put on your website so it could be public facing. So the public has a more comprehensive understanding of what we can do, and also this coordination with MPD. And I think a lot of the onus is probably on MPD to kind of learn and shift how they're doing their deployment of personnel and they're doing their reporting. But I think the more we can collectively encourage them to do so and keep that at the top of our minds, the better. So I don't know if we could have like one agenda item or just to keep those issues live.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't know how it would work with what's coming next month, but there's a lot of good discussion here, so maybe even just a little summary of some of those things, even if we don't have a formal presentation. But I think it's a topic that could take some time for us to talk about.
Right. Yeah.
So-
I think next month's agenda probably will be pretty big as well.
Yeah.
Also takes the step a bit time to develop the presentation.
Mhm.
So I think we'll rather give you a really good comprehensive presentation. So let's keep an eye on
Okay.
it. Yeah, let's do it sometime later.
Okay. Bill?
I'd like to add to what Rebecca spoke about, and I heard Rebecca say, congratulate the captain on his retirement. So it's imminent, or I mean, it's the end of this year or something. So I think this would be an opportune time that I assume they're going to have a replacement for Captain Wheeler. So that would be the time then to start working with the new captain or whoever, whatever position replaces Captain Wheeler. I jotted some things in my notes that it's a complaint-driven process, whereas I think it really, and grant-driven, and I think it's really should be try to introduce maybe to the new leadership on data-driven. That from a safety standpoint or from the city safety. And I think there'd be opportunities to, with the new crash report system and so forth, that there's some opportunities that now to really, the data is there, and now we should use it and analyze it and figure out where whatever the different tools can be used, including law enforcement as one of those tools.
And we do want the analysis of the crash report to come back to us.
Sure.
Because I think that's going to be even more interesting than
Yep.
just seeing all the
Yeah.
statistics
Yeah,
thrown
right.
at us.
I mean, just numbers is.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So other ideas for future agenda items? Okay, I just want to take the opportunity to thank everybody for your active participation. We have a really diverse group of people, and everybody is so interested, and that makes it really excellent for everybody, and I think it really adds to the process. So, Bill?
Future meetings, and now I'm not sure if I sense this from a note that you had, Patrick, as far as, we've got 2 meetings a month that are in our calendars.
Mm-hmm.
But is it going to be kind of a switch now in 2019 that if we're only going to have 1 meeting of a month, it's typically going to try to be the first meeting of the month versus the
We're going to
second?
try for that, yes. And I
Okay,
think
so
it
we
depends.
actually, so it's like the second week in the month.
Right, there are certain, I have the schedule in my folder
I'm gonna
here.
put 'em both in
There
my
are certain
calendar, but-
months where that doesn't work.
Okay, okay.
Across the street.
Yes.
And 260, is that the?
Yeah.
Or
It'll be 206.
206.
It's actually
207.
Here we go.
They changed the room numbers.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the
it's-
same room, just a different number.
If I get that
So
close, I'll
for
find it.
every month except November and December, we have 2 meetings on the calendar.
Yeah.
And there are conflicts with November and December. But we'll try for 1 meeting. As you can see, we have a lot of information, and that's where the work plan that we're going to bring back is going to help us to plan for that, to see, we have, instead of doing monthly reports, we're doing quarterly reports, so that we don't get caught up in having, a monthly parking report, a monthly metro report, so that we have time to do some of these other things. But there are other topics that you've all brought forward, or things that we might want to change. And Rebecca and Ash, we may come up with ideas that might need to then be referred to the Transportation Policy and Planning Board if we're looking to have the policy changed because of what we've seen. So I see us as working really closely with the policy board, because whatever policies you approve, we're going to be responsible for implementing and monitoring, et cetera. So, but it goes both ways. If we see something that, we think the policy might need to be changed. So, anything else? Okay, how about a motion to adjourn? All right, a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Travel safe out there. I just saw something on my phone before saying